Good evening. Could members please rise for the prayer? Dear God, today as this session opens, we pray that your presence will be before us and everyone who serves in the decision-making process of our city. We pray for the direction which will lead our city to be strong and unified. May we continue the legacy of our founders. May we be granted this day the wisdom to make decisions which will be for the good of our city. We also pray for your special blessing on all those who are working to transform our city and make it a better place to live and work. Amen. Please salute the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Mayor Elliott.
Here.
Counsel Kennedy.
Here.
Counsel Leahy.
Here.
Counsel Martin.
Here.
Counsel Mercia.
Here.
Counsel Milanazzo.
Here.
Counsel Rourke.
Here.
Counsel Samaras. Counsel Belanger.
Here.
8 present.
8 present. Chair would like to recognize Council Rita Mercia.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to offer a moment of silence and darkened chamber for Theodore Oxton, beloved husband of Leslie Oxton, with whom he would have celebrated 36 years of marriage in March. Teddy enlisted in the Army in 1963, serving for 5 years. Specialist Oxton was a decorated sharpshooter, marksman, and weapons expert. Mr. Oxton was employed for 35 years as a mechanic for the city of Lowell in the Department of Public Works and later the Water Department. Mr. Oxton held a membership in the Lowell Lodge of Elks and the American Legion in Tingsboro. Teddy was a hard worker all his life and had a high work ethics, second to none. Teddy is survived by his wife, Leslie, his daughter, Jade, with the Lowell Cemetery Department and former secretary in the mayor's office, his daughter, Catherine, and his son, Tech Sergeant Brandon Oxton, United States Air Force. He was a remarkable gentleman. We offer our sympathy to his family, relatives, and many friends. He will be truly missed. And I'd also like to offer a moment of silence for all those who have died since our last city council meeting. May they rest in peace. Thank you.
Thank you, Council. Could we all please rise and darken chambers, please? May they rest in peace. First item on the agenda under the mayor's business. We have 2 citations for 2 young gentlemen. 2 seniors at Tingsboro High School. And we offer these citations for their community service and work in collaboration with the Lowell Fire Department to collect winter coats for the homeless and those in need. Could I have Mr. Jack Trottier and Mr. Paul Sickinger please come to the podium? To Jack Trottier, here's a citation. Be it hereby known to all that the City of Lowell of Commonwealth of Massachusetts hereby offers its sincere gratitude and congratulations to Jack Trottier, a senior at Tingsboro High School, while maintaining a grade point average of 3.3 and volunteering in many community service activities. You've collaborated with the Lowell Fire Department in collecting winter coats for the homeless and those in need in the community. You have logged in countless hours of volunteer work and as a result have collected over 270 coats that will be distributed from the Lowell Fire Department. Now therefore I, Mayor Rodney M. Elliott, on behalf of all my colleagues in government, offer all the best to you as you further your education in getting a degree in business. It is the City of Lowell's sincere hope that you continue to work tirelessly for the good of others. and we thank you for all that you performed for the good of the city. Performed this 25th day of February 2014 by myself, Rodney M. Elliott, and my colleagues in government. We thank you and we congratulate you. Second citation, be it hereby known to all that the City of Lowell and the Commonwealth of Massachusetts hereby offers its sincere gratitude and congratulations to Paul Sickinger, a senior at Tingsboro High School while maintaining a grade point average of 3.2, working a part-time job, and volunteering in various community activities. You have collaborated with the Lowell Fire Department in collecting winter coats for the homeless and those in need in the community. You also have logged countless hours of volunteer work and as a result collected over 270 coats that will be distributed from the Lowell Fire Department. Now therefore I, Mayor Rodney M. Elliott, hereby offer all the best to you as you further your education in hopes of getting a degree in sports management. It is the City of Lowell's sincere hope that you will continue to work tirelessly for the good of others, and we thank you for all that you performed for the good of the city, given this 25th day of February 2014 by myself on behalf of my colleagues in government. We thank you and we congratulate you as well. You all set? Okay. Ms. Larry, Finn, could you please just come up and say a few words?
Stay right here. I met Jack and Joe last year when I went to speak to Tingsboro High School about collecting coats. I went again this year to speak to Miss Craig's class, which they're in. And when I got there, they told me what they had done. So I immediately called the mayor. These two kids have gone above and beyond. They've collected more than 331 coats. 331 coats. Their goal was 250. They traveled to Dunstable. I'm not even sure where they traveled to get these coats. It amazes me what they did. This is what makes communities get along. People like this reaching out to another community to make it a better place. I'm overwhelmed by what they've done, and I applaud them a million times over. And I really don't know what else to say. They're awesome guys, awesome. So thank you.
Thank you, Larry. I think you said it all. Councilor Mercia?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, he did say it all. But this is the youth of this country, right here in our city from Tingsboro. This is unbelievable. We have a young woman in the sheriff's department that came in the other day, and I said, "Oh, your jacket is so pretty. It was so colorful." She said, "Yes, thanks to the efforts of some people that collect coats, I got it free." She was so thrilled about getting that jacket. I don't know if she got it from your place, but the fact remains that we have two young men here today that will provide warmth to people that desperately need a coat. We know how cold it has been lately, and to go with a nice warm coat is a beautiful thing. But moreover, you have graced the name of this organization, which is Coats from and Above. So beyond anything else, you have made the Finn family very proud, and you honored the name of a wonderful woman who this organization is about. So thank you very much for your efforts. We're very, very proud of everything that you have done. You've made a number of people very, very warm this winter through your efforts. Thank you. We're very proud. Thank you.
Thank you. The next item on our agenda, Council Kennedy?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Before we get going with the agenda, I'd just like to point out, as I'm sure everybody's seen, the City Council chamber looks the best I've ever seen it look. And I do think that the manager should be commended, along with Council Leahy, and in particular, Mr. Harmon, for all of the work and time that he put in coordinating this and putting it together. I think it just looks spectacular, and he did a great job.
Thank you, Council. I agree, and just to let you know, I spoke with Mr. Harmon this week. There's one more finishing touch that will be coming, and it's a plaque that will list all of the sponsors and people who donated to the restoration of the chamber. So, just a FYI. Yes. Thank you. You're welcome. Thank you. Have a wonderful evening. Next item is a citation. Could I have Arnaldo and Carmen Silva please come to the podium? As we have done in the past and will continue to do, we'd like to recognize new businesses that have come to the city and present you with a citation. The city manager and myself, Mr. Bakey, we did attend the ribbon cutting this week. It's a beautiful restaurant, and the menu looks delicious. And so we welcome all Lowellians to go down to San Miguel Restaurant on 490 Central Street. But thank you for coming here tonight. On behalf of my colleagues in government, we have a citation. Be it hereby known to all that the City of Lowell and the Commonwealth of Massachusetts hereby offers San Miguel Restaurant and its owners, Ronaldo and Carmen Silva, as a new business to make its home at 490 Central Street, Lowell, Massachusetts. The city is honored that Mr. and Mrs. Silva have brought the distinct cuisine and warm ambiance of their native Azores to the City of Lowell. The entire City of Lowell extends its deepest wishes to Mr. and Mrs. Silva, San Miguel Restaurant, and we thank you for bringing the richness of the Portuguese cuisine here. This citation is given by myself on behalf of my colleagues in government this 25th day of February 2014. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Have a good night.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilor Mercia?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a great motion that was brought forth some years ago by former City Councilor Dan Tenza when he wanted to bring and recognize businesses here before the City Council. Sometimes we have a good intention to go when there's a ribbon cutting, and sometimes we just can't make it there. And that's what's the case quite recently when they had their open house. So I'm glad that they came before the City Council this evening so that we can say thank you for choosing Lowell to start a business. We're very, very grateful for your patronage and your time and effort that you're putting in. I had the honor to go to San Miguel, actually, so I take great pride in knowing that they named the restaurant, and we certainly will visit that place in the future. So thank you, Mr. Mayor, for giving them a citation and bringing them forward for us to meet. Thank you.
You're welcome, Councilor. Thank you. Moving on to the next item on the agenda, item 2-1, this is under the City Clerk. Minutes of the City Council meeting, February 11th. Discussion, motion to accept by Councilor Kennedy, seconded by Councilor Belanger. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye. Motion carries. Agenda minutes will be placed on file. Next item under City Auditor. There are 3 reports, three communications. Motion to accept and place on file by Councilor Leahy, seconded by Councilor Martin. All those in favor signify by saying aye. And the opposed, motion carries. We have one public hearing, but it's not 7 o'clock, so we'll move on with the agenda. Under 5-1, communication summaries, communications from the city manager. Discussion? No discussion? Councilor Rourke.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. With regards to the response to the Shot Spotter program, I ask that would be referred back to the Public Safety Subcommittee for further discussion, please.
Second.
Councilor, all set?
Yes.
Okay.
So I seconded the motion to refer it back to the Public Safety.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Motion by Councilor Rourke, seconded by Councilor Milonazo to refer it back to the Public Safety Subcommittee. Further discussion on the motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. And the opposed? Motion carries. Further discussion under communications from the city manager. Councilor Leahy?
Thank you. Through you to the manager, we got the report on the County Square Bridge, so that's good news that they're gonna finish that up early. Would you know what the responsibility is, like, so when they do the bridge, are we responsible for evening the road off to it, or is that part of the deal? I never thought of that until looking at it now. It's kind of rough getting to it and then rough.
That
And then I did have one quick question about the new sidewalk. It looks a little rough. I don't know what they did when they poured the cement, but not to get too picky about it, but
Right.
it just doesn't look right. So, I mean, when we're done, do we kind of do we have any say in the finished product, or?
I'd have to check on the sidewalk. On the paving, they'll have to cut that in. They'll cut that in and
Make sure it's
and make
good
sure
to
that
the
it's
bridge
right.
and, okay.
Exactly.
All
But
right.
we'll check on the sidewalk.
Okay, thank you.
Any further discussion? Entertain a motion to accept the responses and place on file by Councilor Mercier, seconded by Councilor Rourke. All those in favor signify by saying aye. And the opposed? Motion carries. Next item is a communication, accept resignation of Troy Betancourt. Motion to accept by Councilor Milonazo, seconded by Councilor Rourke, to place on file. All those in favor, accept and place on file. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. And the opposed, motion carries.
Mr. Mayor,
Madam
uh,
Councilor Mercier.
thank you, Mr. Mayor. On Troy Betancourt's resignation, he did state some concern, and he said the city never appointed representatives per our charter from the city council, the school committee, and the city manager's office. If that's part of the charter, then we really should honor that. And I wanted to bring that forward.
I agree, Council. I've sent out requests to members of the council to solicit anyone that wants to participate on, there's that one, and there's another one, the Immigration Commission. So I am seeking any member that hasn't been appointed at this point, if they'd be willing to serve. Mr. Manager, do you have something to add?
Mr. Mayor, the only addition I was going to make is that I did have a meeting with some representatives of the commission recently, and they're looking to sort of redo their charter anyway, but I think they still would like to have some participation by someone from the city council and other ex officio positions, but they are looking to sort of redo themselves a little bit.
Okay,
So
thank
perhaps
you.
something will happen with that.
Okay.
Okay, next item is communication from the city manager for out-of-state travel. Motion to waive the full reading by Counsel Rourke, seconded by Counsel Milonazo. All those in favor signify by saying aye, and the opposed. Motion carries. Second reading by title is just communication for out-of-state travel. Questions? Counsel Mercy?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I didn't get anything in the packet regarding this out-of-state travel, so I don't know where they're going or what's happening here.
Yeah, I don't see it in my package.
Just to refresh it, because
Okay, I will read it, Counselor. Dear Mayor Elliott, members of the City Council, the Department of Planning and Development is requesting approval for Phil Ferreira, Housing Energy Program Director, Tony Snow, Lead Program Manager, and Todd Wokel, Lead Program Project Managers, to attend HUD's required 2014 National Healthy Homes and Lead Hazard Control Conference. The conference takes place May 28th through the 30th in Nashville, Tennessee. HUD requires a program manager and 2 other key staff to attend. Attendance at this conference will provide grantees with the necessary tools to ensure the successful operation of the lead abatement program. These expenses will be paid entirely from grant funds through the Lead Hazard Control Grant. Questions?
yeah, move approval.
Move approval?
That's
Okay,
fine.
move approval by Councilor Mercier, second by Councilor Martin. Roll call.
Mayor Elliott.
Yes.
Counsel Kennedy.
Yes.
Counsel Leahy.
Yes.
Counsel Martin.
Yes.
Counsel Mercia.
Yes,
Counsel Milonazo.
Yes.
Counsel Rourke.
Yes.
Samaras. Counsel Belanger.
Yes.
8 yeas.
8 yeas. Motion carries. Being 7 o'clock, we'll move into our public hearings. We have a utility public hearing from National Grid and Verizon NE. Request pole location at 59 South Whipple Street. Okay, we'll open up the public hearing for those wishing to speak in favor. Those wishing to speak in favor, please state your name and address.
Hi, David Boucher, Senior Design Technician, National Grid, 1101 Turnpike Street, North Andover, Mass. I'm here on behalf of National Grid to ask the City of Lowell to relocate pole 5 on South Whipple Street, approximately 5 feet northerly. And if the city sees fit, it would enable us to relocate that pole.
Questions? Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to speak in favor?
Nick Dokas, 59 South Whipple Street. I currently reside there, and I'm looking to request to have the pole moved because of the trash and recycling. Currently, I don't have a driveway, and the parking is very limited. So when myself and my tenant upstairs park in front of my house, the recycling and the trash bins, one trash, one recycling for each unit, and 59.5 South Whipple, which is behind me, they put their trash and recycling out as well. It gets blocked by both vehicles and it can't be picked up properly. So if I have the pole moved, I'll be able to place the bins where the pole currently is, and they'll be able to get picked up. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Boucher, could you respond to the gentleman's concern?
It sounded like he was in favor of moving the pole.
Right.
I don't know what
Okay.
question,
Okay,
yeah. So
all
am I.
right, sorry about that. Okay, anyone else wishing to speak in favor? Okay, I was confused, I'm sorry. Anyone else wishing to speak in favor? That portion of the hearing is closed. Anyone wishing to speak in opposition? In opposition? In opposition. That portion of the hearing is closed. Entertain a motion to refer to the wire inspector by Counsel Kennedy, seconded by Counsel Belanger. All those in favor signify by saying aye, and the opposed? Motion carries.
Mr. Mayor,
Counsel Martin?
so, I mean, we have a resident here probably not familiar with the process, but, so this was approved, it'll go to the wire inspector and come back to us with a report, and typically we'd adopt the accompanying order.
Right.
So that concludes the process for tonight, and it's been approved, but it will take a little bit more time for the final action.
Makes sense, Mr. Dukas? Okay. So it'll be back here next week, but should be all set.
Yeah. You don't need to come back, right?
Thank you for postponing it a week. Last week's weather was obviously a good reason not to do it last week. We appreciate that.
You're very welcome. I think we're all glad that we postponed it last week. Okay, moving back to the agenda. Item 6.1, votes from the city manager. This is a vote to authorize the city manager to execute the third amendment to the LDA with Trinity Hamilton Partnership. Motion to waive the full reading by Councilor Belanger, seconded by Councilor Kennedy. All those in favor signify by saying aye, and the opposed. Motion carries. Second reading by title, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, the City of Lowell, to vote in City Council authorizing the city manager to execute a third amendment to the Development and Land Disposition Agreement with Trinity Hamilton Canal Limited Partnership to provide deadlines for individual site development beyond the second phase and to provide greater structure to the remaining phases of the project located in the area of and pursuant to the Jackson-Appleton Middlesex Urban Revitalization Development Plan. What is the wish of the body?
Move
Mr. Mayor.
approval.
Motion to approve by Council Marcia, seconded by Council Milanazzo. Council Kennedy, do you have a question?
I was going to make the motion, but if we could hear briefly from Mr. Bakey on this, then that would probably be helpful.
Mr. Bakey?
So, good evening, everyone. As those who were on the council when the development agreement with Trinity was first approved and executed, you will probably recall that there was a fair amount of uncertainty as to exactly where things were going to go in the future, and it was a long-range project and so forth. So it specified some very specific dates for basically the beginning phases of the project to get them going. And we now have seen the Appleton Mills be completed, and Trinity has completed the exterior core and shell work for the 110 Canal building. The original agreement was basically silent as to the work after the second phase. There were no deadlines in the agreement. Now that Trinity has completed those first phases, we're basically looking for an amendment to the agreement that will create a little more structure going forward, set a deadline for the next phase that is date specific, and then beyond that, tie the dates for the next phases to encouraging work to continue basically as following the completion of each subsequent phase. The agreement also does provide that the city manager would have the ability to work with Trinity if market conditions create circumstances where it's difficult to precisely meet one of those subsequent deadlines. So that's essentially what this amendment would do. Creates a little bit of structure going forward.
Council Belanger.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. To Adam, now, with last week's meeting being canceled due to weather, Mr. Backey, do Trinity Financial officials have plans on coming back up again in the near future?
Well, one of them is actually here tonight.
Oh, wonderful.
We have Abby Goldenfarb, who's a vice president at Trinity Financial and has really been the project manager for the Hamilton Canal District project pretty much from the beginning, is here. She can speak a little bit to what they've been doing if you're interested in that this evening.
Oh, absolutely.
Well,
Council Mercia?
Well, Mr. Mayor, would that third phase be the acquisition of the historic National Parks parking lot? Would that be part of it at all?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me here tonight. On behalf of Jim Keefe, who's the company's president, I wanted to apologize for him not being here. We had hoped to be on last week's agenda. He is unfortunately in Florida right now, so don't feel too sorry for him, but he's at a conference. But to answer your question, the Park Service parking lots are at a future phase. Right now, we are waiting. The Park Service and the city are undergoing a process through which those parking lots can be conveyed to the city. Once that happens, we will begin the full marketing of the Hamilton Canal District. We have plans to open a marketing center in the 110 Canal Building, but it is really not appropriate for us to do that until those parcels are under the control of the city. So that is not mentioned in this agreement, but that is our intent, those will be subsequent phases. To update you on the project in general, I'm sure everyone hopefully has been into the Appleton Mills, which we completed in 2011. We have certified over 250 artists as part of that process, and today the building is stabilized, and it is a really wonderful arts community. We then took to work on the second building, which was the most strong and stable building, but really became the most unattractive building on the site, which was 110 Canal. We worked for a number of years with the city and the Lowell delegation and the city council to try and come up with creative ways to attract tenants. But unfortunately, no one was really able to look at that building and imagine that it could possibly look as it does today. Today, our efforts are at leasing the building. We really envision the Hamilton Canal District as a wonderful place for people to live and work. We see it as a gateway to Lowell, a place that would really inspire creative thinking, entrepreneurship, and we have been really holding out for a tenant that really fits that goal. We have actually passed up a number of tenants who've been interested in the building and would pay a fair share, a fair market rent, but really would not fit with the brand that I think the city of Lowell wants to convey with that building, is that Lowell is, you hear a lot about the Innovation District in South Boston, and what we're really trying to promote is Lowell is the original Innovation District. And we want innovation and entrepreneurship to really be a hallmark of this district. And we are prepared to hold out until we find a tenant that really is appropriate. We are in discussions with a potential tenant right now, and we hope to have an announcement soon, but unfortunately we don't have it tonight. We are in process of planning the next stages, parcels 8 and 9, which would really complete the Appleton Mills courtyard. Those would be, we're looking at market rate housing for those parcels. That's around 130 units of market rate housing, and we're working to try and make that possible for groundbreaking next year.
Council Belanger?
Yes, to you, Mr. Chairman. I do want to thank Trinity officials for being here this evening. Thank you very much. And I do want to thank them, as many of us seen, I'm sure, a week and a half ago in the newspaper, on 2 consecutive days, Saturday and Sunday, Trinity Financial put 2 full-page ads, color ads in the newspaper, informing residents of the city of the progress they made and the future progress that they're going to make. So thank you for that. I received many great feedback on those ads. Thank you very much. So we're very pleased that this piece here is so important to our revitalization. It's great what you've done to this point, but much more needs to be done. I think we all agree to that. So I also chair the Economic Development Subcommittee. I'd like to keep in contact with your office and periodically, and please let us know what the city can do as far as locating tenants. We're your partner in this mission as well, so we're here to work with you. And so I look forward to future communications on this, moving this project forward, because it's going to take a collaborative effort here to get this complete. So I do look forward to working with you, and thank you for coming.
Well,
thank you very much.
And I just want to thank the City Council, and most importantly, on behalf of Trinity, it's a great loss, the loss of Bernie and the loss of Adam. They have been incredible to work with all around the country. We talk with people and tell them what a fine job this city does, not only to think outside of the box, to think creatively, but you've really hired a great group, and we are sad to see them go. So we look forward to continuing to work with you, and thank you for everything.
Council Martin?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I too appreciate the update, and I just, my question is where are we with the Park Service parcels? You know, there has been congressional action, right? We're not...
Manager?
It's a very, I'm going to turn it over to Adam in a second, but it's a very complex process, as you might imagine, going through the federal bureaucracy on this. The rules that come through with regards to the appraisal and the appropriate swapping of lands, and they have the local Park Service has certain requirements that they need for their buses and their number of cars, and we've been trying to work with them on that with regards to the new garage that will be built, but I'll turn it over to Adam.
Mr. Bakey?
Yeah, it's basically a multi-step process. When we entered into the master planning, and the local national park people were part of that whole master planning process that concluded that it would be more appropriate to include those parking lots for the future Hamilton Canal District than leave them as suburban-style parking lots. Everyone locally was on board, but at that moment in time, there was actually congressional legislation that prohibited the Park Service from conveying the lots to the city that would have facilitated this deal. So what we then had to do, working in sort of partnership with Trinity, the park, and the city, we had to actually work with Nikki Songas's office, and she was able to successfully, along with Senator Kerry, shepherd a bill through Congress that changed the law to make it possible to realize the necessary land transaction. Would have been nice if we could have had a bill that said, now go and do it, but unfortunately that was not a feasible possibility. It was basically just enabling legislation. So now we have to work with a fairly bureaucratic process with the National Park Service, and you can understand the National Park Service as a whole is not really set up to sell their lands for real estate development. I mean, when you think about the Grand Canyon and Yosemite and that sort of thing, that's not really what they're for. So it's appropriate that it's a cumbersome process, but obviously in a case like this is not selling the Grand Canyon. This is really appropriate to see the development, which is why everyone in the Park Service, all the way up to the folks in DC, are supportive of doing this, but we still have to work our way through their process. The city, the process essentially is the city needs to identify the replication locations that would be exchanged. The national park can't just sell their property. They have to actually exchange it and receive equivalently valuable property to them, both from an appraisal basis and from a functional basis in exchange. What we're essentially envisioning, and has been sort of the plan all along, is that the parking would be replicated in the new garage that's envisioned to be part of the Hamilton Canal District development. But we have to define things a little more specifically. We're in the process of working. Trinity's a partner, the city and the national park are working together to define the scope of the appraisal that needs to take place, and that of course has to be done by yet another federal agency in order to be the proper one. We have to work our way through that process, and we expect probably over the course of the next year and a half, we will get to a place where values are established, everything's all set, and a deal essentially closes that will then give the city site control of the parking lots. At that point, the parking lots will get wrapped into, via amendment presumably, wrapped into the development agreement, and they will then Trinity will have the same rights to develop them that they have to develop the rest of the district. And it really is critical that that does happen. I mean, part of the reason you haven't seen a more robust effort around commercial development in the district is those really are the prime commercial sites of the district, the high visibility, great access, and so forth. And if we're going to really market the future and the potential of this district, we really need those to be part of the picture. And until we've resolved this whole, again, bureaucratic process with the Park Service, we can't realistically do that in any meaningful way, nor can Trinity. So that's why this is really the critical next step. And I realize it's one that sort of happens behind the scenes and doesn't get a lot of public attention, and probably a lot of people wonder about it. You know, it is a necessarily lengthy and cumbersome one, but we are making progress, and I am quite confident that the ultimately success will be achieved on that, and the project will realize its potential.
Thank you, Mr. Baker. Council Martin?
So did I hear right? You said a year to a year and a half?
I think that's about what we're looking at this point in terms of the project. Can't swear by a particular date, because A, I won't be around to shepherd it, but also the National Park process is actually one that no one locally completely controls. But that does, as we look at all the timelines they've laid out for us of all the procedural steps that they need to take, it looks like a year and a half is quite doable.
All right. Okay. I mean, I agree with you. This is the important commercial piece. You know, I can appreciate the efforts at 110 Canal, but if this is going to be a mixed use, we need some other uses besides residential, and this is really the key piece. So appreciate the efforts to date and the update, but this is something we need to stay on top of. Thank you.
Council Rourke?
As Assistant Planner, the Chancellor and yourself said that you'd be able to help out down the line with such critical areas of need. Would this be something that you would stay on for to see it through next year and a half?
Well, I can't, I will be starting at the university on Monday, and Friday will be my last day here. I can't stay on per se, but you are correct that the Chancellor has offered for me to continue to advise on certain matters as they come up, and I would certainly hope to, even as a resident of the city, I want to see this continue to be successful. So I do hope to be able to provide whatever assistance I can provide in either helping my successors be selected, helping my successors understand these projects, and ultimately succeed, help them succeed.
Certainly hope that's the case. Thank you.
Further questions on this? Roll call.
Mayor Elliott.
Yes.
Counsel Kennedy.
Yes.
Counsel Leahy.
Yes.
Counsel Martin.
Yes.
Counsel Mercia.
Yes.
Counsel Milonazo.
Yes.
Counsel Rourke.
Yes.
Counsel Samaras. Counsel Belanger.
Yes.
8 yeas.
8 yeas, motion carries. Next item on the agenda. The city manager votes. It's a vote, transfer $2 million from Chapter 17 account to the school department. Second reading by title, Commonwealth of Massachusetts, City of Lowell, a vote in City Council, order to appropriate money to the school department in the amount of $2 million from the Chapter 17 account.
Mr. Mayor,
Council Kennedy?
as long as we're taking this up, I think concurrent with this, it might be in order to take up. I have a motion on regarding this, so we probably handle them both at the same time.
Okay.
I think the motion just asked for a report or for some information, so I think that would be appropriate if there's no objection from the body.
No objection? So 10.5, motion by Council Kennedy. Request City Council and City Manager discuss the letter dated January 31st, 2014 from the Mass Commission of Elementary and Secondary Education regarding school budget shortfall. Second by Council Belanger. So you want to go first, Council Kennedy, or you want the presentation from the City Manager?
I would like to go first because the manager's likely to be pretty lengthy, so it's, whereas I'm always brief. The
In the eye of the beholder, or the ear of the beholder.
Mr. Mayor, through you to the manager, the reason for the motion is that there were comments that you made in the paper that implied that the reason that there was a shortfall in the school budget was because there was pressure put on you by the city council to come in at a zero tax increase. I don't remember that being the case. I don't think that during the budget hearings that the city council ever took a vote or that it was ever recommended by you that there would be a shortfall. I think that the city council went into the budget thinking that that the school department budget was fully funded. I only remember a conversation or a discussion regarding the charter school and the funding for the charter school and what effect that might have on the budget down the road. And that was about it. So, and I do recall that you wrote an article for the paper probably a month ago. And one of the accomplishments that you had in the article that you wrote was that you had a zero tax increase. So I guess what concerns me is that sometimes comments like that, even if they're made incorrectly or without a lot of thought, that they tend to become part of the historical record. And I don't think that's the case. I don't think there was, I think if you look at what went on since the last budget, there were other areas where money could have been taken. For instance, the 7.8 that we had for in healthcare, a portion of that money, rather than to take all of that money and apply it as we did, we could have taken a portion of that money and fully funded the school department budget and still had money, and we still would have looked good and looked good to the people that were concerned with our bond ratings. So the only reason I have the motion on is just to make that point, that it really is not, the reason for the shortfall is not because the city council insisted that there be a zero tax increase this year or last year. I think that those were good things. I have no regrets about that. I don't think anybody on the city council should have any regrets about that. And the shortfall that's a different matter, but that's a matter for the administration, not for the city council, and that's my view. And so I guess my question would be, do you agree with my comments? Did you not mean to say that it was the city council's insistence or pressure that the city council put on you somehow that caused you to have a shortfall in the school side?
Well, I think that
Manager?
I think that the story or the situation is more complex than anything that you've described. And I'm not saying it was the city council, although there were city council votes. In fact, I do think that one of them was before you came on the council, to utilize all the health insurance savings to reduce taxes. There was clearly a prioritization to hold the line on taxes. And the administration tried to accomplish that to the benefit of the council, but very frankly, we felt we could do that as well. But again, it's more complex than all of that, and if that's the image that's been placed out there, there's a lot more that goes into it than just holding the line on taxes. There was a number of forces at play that resulted in the shortfall that I will go through, including, well, I guess I'll say now, certainly one of them is the reduction in the health insurance costs for retirees. We were really in a mysterious area there when we were doing the budget, and I recall that that was a lengthy discussion that what we should do with the health insurance in general. And we made savings in all departments of the city. The school department themselves had substantial savings for their active employees, and that was money that was freed up within their actual budget to then plow back into the classroom that they were able to do. And so they actually had more money that year, free, with flexible money that they could utilize. But in the terms of the retiree health insurance, that was something that we couldn't project early on. When we did the budget in April of 2012, we didn't know what people would sign up for health insurance. We assumed that they would go right back to the high-priced indemnity plans, but in fact, they seem to go to the cheaper plans, at least for a period of time. We see that moving back a little bit now. That was one area. That was a big area for us. The other is in the area of energy. We had invested in our buildings to make them more energy efficient, and the energy costs for the schools are part of the city budget now. And when those energy costs came in, we tried to be conservative. We did much better than we originally anticipated. We also had the benefit, I think, of a warmer winter. We did very well in procuring energy from a third party, so we saw some savings there. The tax issue comes up, though, in terms of if we, and I take the blame, if you will, that we had some reservations about going all the way to zero, and perhaps we should have raised those more, but we wanted to meet the council's goals, and we wanted to do it for the residents of the city. I remember back in 2011, I think it was, where we had $1.5 million of additional local aid. And the proposal that we came forward with was to put a third of it into schools, a third of it into snow, and a third of it into tax relief. And the council was adamant that They wanted that going to tax relief. And I believe most of the money was put towards tax relief that year. That held it down to 0.25% increase or 0.5% increase. So when you go into it with this sort of mindset that we're going to run this as tight as we can to avoid. Now, I really thought in 13 we would make the net school spending if those other things hadn't happened, but we would have liked to have put a little bit more towards schools. In 14, we put $2.5 million into schools and felt that that would be enough to get us to the net school spending. And right now we're trending behind on that, but we think we'll make that up by the end of 14, or a big chunk of that. But I don't want it to. Council, if you sense that I was saying, well, we would have made it if the council hadn't forced us to go with zero. No, I think it was a lot of different things, but certainly that was in the mindset too, to try to do that. And Mr. Moses and I had lengthy conversations about that, and I was adamant that we wanted to get to zero.
Quote in the paper last Wednesday, or I guess 2 Wednesdays ago, since it wasn't a meeting last Wednesday, so it would be 2 Wednesdays ago, it was at the very end of the article, and it was to that, you made that point. It created the notion that that was the case. And I don't think, and that's what I took exception to, is I don't see that as being the reason for it. I think there's a lot of other ways you can move the money around, but certainly we could have fully funded the school department. We could have had a zero tax increase. Had we not, for instance, put all of that 7.8 insurance money into the account that we put it into.
Yeah, and Councilor, I don't, that's one thing I don't regret. I do regret that we hadn't put more of a moderate increase in taxes. I think that's better for the city in the long run. I've always felt that. I fell victim of sorts to the irrational exuberance of the notion that we could go without a tax increase. And we did it, and I'm proud of that because it showed the results of the efforts that we've made to improve how we do business, health insurance, energy, so many different areas. There's a piece that's coming out. We just got a report from, this is really getting off school spending, but we just got a report from the DPW that they project that $200,000 that we spent on those sander, computerized sander equipment, and I know there wasn't unanimity on the council to support that. That $200,000 has saved us $1 million worth of salt the last 2 years. Those are the things that we've been doing over the last 7.5 years that I think have resulted in a good financial condition. And not having to go up in taxes gave us an opportunity to show what we achieved. But as I get ready to depart, my advice will go back to what I said when I first became city manager. I think a moderate increase on an annual basis is better for the city. If you look at what the Oversight Board did when they first came in the 90s, they did that. They put a 2.5% increase in each year, and the city quickly regained its footing and was stable. When you look at what Mr. Moses and I did when we first came on in 2006, is the first budget that we did, which was for fiscal year 2008, we put that in place, and we pretty much mirrored what the Oversight Board had done, and we saw things turn around quickly. But that would be my advice moving forward. Just do that.
I think, Mr. Manager, we don't need to agree on everything all the time. In fact, I'm not even sure that I don't think it's really healthy to agree on everything all of the time. I think the only thing we need to agree on tonight is that the only reason that the main reason that there's a shortfall in the school budget is not because it was a zero tax increase. I don't think anybody on this council or people in the city expect that there can be a zero tax increase year after year after year. But I do think that it was nice to be able to provide one just about 2 years in a row.
Right. Yeah, and actually it's almost 3 years in a row if you look back. But I can tell you that it wasn't because of that, but those discussions that took place in the room next door here, in the conference room as we went through the budget each year, did include that consideration, and that there is no doubt about that. And we just have to be cautious of that moving forward. So, if you would like me to, I will go through my presentation. And I think the presentation will address the motion of Councilor Leahy and Councilor Samaras as well, because it does spell out a strategy for solving the problem that we have before us now. Just very quickly, in fiscal year 2009, Lowell met its net school spending requirement for the first time since FY96. And I'm going to have some charts and some graphs that show some of this, but these are some key points that I want you to, that I'd like everyone to sort of take into consideration. From fiscal year 09 to 11, the city spent almost $9.8 million over the requirement. And as Councilor Martin pointed out at the last meeting that we had when we talked about this issue, we don't get credit for that. That's not something that then you have that on the books as an excess spending, and therefore you can drop below the following year. With a shortage, you have to carry that into the next fiscal year. With a excess, that's good, and that's where it stands. The other historical note, and again I'll have a chart that shows this, is the city's actual spending exceeded the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education projected spending each fiscal year from 07 to 12. So the question of, when we saw the letter back in a year ago, in the middle of fiscal year 13, actually kind of late in it, when it projected 1.9, we felt that some of those numbers were probably going to be off, and you'll see in a moment how that really plays out historically with the way we report and how it all comes through. This is the graph that I would show you is, and just the council has copies of this on their desks, but you can see that in 1996 we were above net school spending, and we quickly descended well below, almost hitting 5%. You can go up to 5% without any type of penalty, but you cannot exceed 5% at the risk of being penalized. There are communities in the state that are below 5% or above 5%, but to date, no one has actually been penalized. It's my understanding, and I can only say this anecdotally, but I have had conversations with people in the city that indicate that it was in fact a strategy of the city to stay below net school spending, but within the 5%. That ensured that we weren't overextending ourselves to the school department. And so when people hear that we're below, but we're not at 5, then there's a sense that, well, that was acceptable. But during that period of time, you can see this was, we were below for some 10 years. In fiscal year 07, when we closed out the books in December of 7, and working with the school department, we got close. In 08, we got closer. And then you can see that we went up. Unlike the anecdotal stay at 5, within that 5%, we actually submitted a policy for the council that said that we would make, or a goal that we would be at 101%. So obviously we were above at that point in time. 13 and was a disappointment clearly to us as well. These are just, and these you will not be able to read from your seats, but they are in front of you there. But it just lists out the amounts that we were above or below. But you can see that back in fiscal year 2000, we were 4.9% below. Fiscal year 2003, we were 4.8% below. Fiscal year 5, we were 4.3%. We were always staying way down. So then you can see that we went up, got closer, went over 2.8%, 1.2%, 2.7% over the required net school spending. In fiscal year 12, we were virtually at the spending. Until 13, we went below by $3.8 million, or 2.3%. Right now, according to the DESE, we're going to be about $4.2 million below in 14, which is of 2.5%. But you'll see with the plan we've put together, we think we can address that. This next one gives you some sense, though, of why, when we got that $1.9 million projection, that we felt comfortable that could be accommodated. Looking at 07, the first year that we actually put together, working with the school department, the reports that go into calculating that school spending. In fiscal year '07, they had projected, that we'd be $4.3 million below. In fact, we were $440,000 below. That's a difference of $3.9 million. Fiscal year '08, they said we'd be 611. We were 308. Actually, a difference of $302,000. Dramatically in '09. And '09 is a little strange year because that was the year that the ARRA funding came through. They projected us, again, being short by 387, but in fact, we exceeded it by $4 million. So we were above that year by, the difference there is $4.4 million. And it goes on. Each year, we beat the DESE projected surplus or shortfall by substantial margins. So when we got that in, for 13 of $1.9 million, we felt we would get closer, particularly given the contributions we had made and the other spending we were doing. Just by way of a timeline, because I know that was a question at the last meeting as well, when did we know about this? Well, we don't know about it until the actual letter comes out in January. The reports are filed, January, February. The reports are filed in the fall. And it takes a while for DESE to actually, because the books have to be closed here and all the numbers have to be calculated. We do our part of it. The business office over at the school department completes the form and submits it. And then by the time you get the letter, you're well past the fiscal year that's affected. So there's not much you can do about that year, but there is the following year that you are in that you're well through as well, so there's not much you can do there. It really comes to the next fiscal year. So it's sort of affecting 3 different fiscal years there. And it's a process. And the other point I would make on that is that these letters, right now there are 36 communities across the Commonwealth that are below net school spending. Others are right at it, and obviously there are some that are substantially above it. Lowell is actually pretty good compared to other communities that are below it. And then some of our neighbors are below it as well. So in terms of how do we solve the problem? First off, the vote that you have in front of you tonight is to contribute $2 million towards the school budget from the Chapter 17 fund. Now, this fund was put in place by the Oversight Board back in 1993, and it does have a requirement that it has to be replenished the following year. And so what we're proposing is that we would transfer the money out of the Chapter 17 fund. It would then be replaced by free cash in fiscal year 14, or from fiscal year 14. So you'll know about that in the fall. We do expect that the state is going to reimburse us for an overassessment. That will come in April. That's going to be roughly $1 million, potentially a little bit more. We also are anticipating that there will be a supplemental budget in the legislature to give us charter school reimbursement. That has been talked about on Beacon Hill. It was voted down just recently, but the people that I've spoken to have indicated that that will come up later in the spring. If it does not come up, if it doesn't happen, there should still be adequate free cash. And as a total fallback, you could transfer money out of the stabilization fund at that time. But I would not recommend that at this time. I think the Chapter 17 fund is the better way to go. Then in another part of the action plan is $800,000 in additional local contribution to the schools in FY15. And you'll see a little bit more detail on that in a moment. But the budget that I'm preparing to hand over to the City Council next week does include $800,000 in additional money for the schools. And then another part of the action plan is for both 13 and 14, there has been work done at the DPW, by the DPW for the schools, but the paperwork has not actually been totally tabulated, and so we think that there's the opportunity for amending the reports that go into the state and getting credit for those investments that we've made. On a year-by-year basis, so that it becomes more clear, for fiscal year 13 and 14, for fiscal year 13, right now, we have that $3.8 million, and I just use rough numbers here, $3.8 million shortfall. We think we can pick up another $500,000 from the DPW work orders, and we're working with the school department on including in our net school spending costs, the health insurance for nurses and our school resource officers. We anticipate about $500,000 there. There may be some issues with the nurses and school resource officers, but we're quite sure that we can count those because they're specifically in the schools. The DPW work order number actually is a little on the low side, but we wanted to be conservative here. That will knock that shortfall down to $3.3 million. So for 14, the year we're in now, instead of the 3.8 being carried over, you'll have the 3.3 carried over. And then the DESE is anticipating right now that our 14, just for 14, not including the 13 shortfall, there's about $400,000, which would bring us up to about 3.7 for the shortfall in fiscal year 2014. Again, we think that we can pull through enough work orders that have been sitting there that can be calculated, and the health care for nurses and security and school resource officers. And it's been a tough winter. There are additional snow costs to be calculated, and we can knock that down by another roughly $600,000. And again, this is where we enter into the Chapter 17 fund of the $2 million, which gives us an updated shortfall amount of $1.1 million, which we carry over into 15, that 1.1. Right now, they're anticipating that we would have to increase our school spending. Now, again, I want to stress, this is school spending total, school department as well as city money that goes towards education under the formula. And they're projecting right now a regular increase of $2 million in the numbers that we've seen. However, right now, we have, to make up that $2 million, we have increased pension costs. As you know, we're going to go up on our pension this year, or in fiscal year 2015, by roughly $3 million. $800,000 of that increase is attributable to the school employees, not teachers. They're covered under the teachers' retirement system, but the other employees. We're looking at increased health insurance costs for retirees of about $300,000. Again, the allocation for work orders and health insurance for nurses and school resource officers of $700,000. The additional contribution that we would be making of $800,000, and the fiscal year 15 free cash, we think there'll be adequate free cash at the end of this year to contribute $500,000, which would bring us back to zero in 15. Now, I won't be here, but some of these numbers may not come completely, but there should be enough flexibility here to get us within either utilizing free cash or you might be able to use the Chapter 17 account again and roll it over. After you put the money back in, you can take it back out. And again, I wouldn't recommend it, but worst comes to worst, you could use the stabilization fund for that purpose. I felt that with regards to Councilor Kennedy's comment about the OPEB funds, that was something that's a hot topic for the bond rating agencies, and I also think it's something that is really the ticking time bomb out there, and that getting the city into that now it was something I felt was necessary, particularly where we have other flexibility to deal with some of these other issues that might arise.
Councilor Kennedy.
I can understand, I can appreciate those comments, but I think that if we didn't have the 7.8, we wouldn't be putting anything into that fund. And so anything that went in, whether it was 7.8 or an amount lesser, as long as it was somewhat substantial, was still going to be a good thing. I'm really pleased to hear that you're going to have a proposed budget, at least document for the council before you leave. I really wasn't expecting that, and I think that's a good thing. If I could, why would you recommend and I guess it doesn't matter so much, but why are you recommending that the money, that this transfer come out of Chapter 17 rather than stabilization? When in your comments, and I'm assuming that the budget that you're gonna give us is gonna kind of reflect this?
Yes.
Is it? Yeah. Okay, and so if you're saying at the end, and I think your last couple of sentences were, you know, you can retake it out of Chapter 17 fund in the next fiscal year or the stabilization fund, then why are you recommending now that it come out of Chapter 17, the Chapter 17 fund rather than the stabilization fund?
I think it shows discipline on the part of the city, and it shows discipline for the taxpayers of the city, but it also shows discipline to the rating agencies and the Department of Revenue. And we've already had conversations with the Department of Revenue, and they're very pleased with this proposal.
Okay. Do you think that it shows discipline, or do you think that it imposes discipline?
It's all in, that too is in the eye of the beholder.
Further discussion on this? Council Rourke?
Mr. Mayor, through to the city manager. Mr. Manager, what's our total now in Chapter 17?
It's $4.2 million. That's the same amount that was put in back in '93 and remains the same.
Okay, so just out of curiosity, with all the savings you talk about and with all these charts here, why not use the Chapter 17 money for the full 3.8 now, and then just replenish that with savings or whatnot going forward for the next?
I don't know, well, two reasons for that. One, I think that where you do have to replenish it, again, the city really, again, the city had never made net school spending until I became city manager. It did back in the early 90s, but, so I say that only because I want it very clear. I'm a big supporter of putting money into the schools. But I think to take $3.8 million out now, that would only leave $400,000, that might tie the hands of the next city administration and the city council in terms of being able to replenish that. I don't know if you'd be able to replenish. I don't know if there'll be that much free cash to replenish that. I could see there being $2.5 to $3 million maybe, but you're not going to know that until October, November. And if you don't get all the way, you know, you're still going to be very, very close, far better than the city was during the 90s and early 2000s. The other issue is, with all due respect to, and actually I think some of the school people would probably agree with this, if they were suddenly given $3.8 million, it's like winning the lottery. You might, how would you spend it? They don't necessarily have a way to spend it because this is only going to be one-time money for them. And so what can they buy that's worth $3.8 million? $2 million is more reasonable. It's something they can use to, they've got some needs for technology. They've got some other one-time costs that they could take on with this. But then that replenishment the next year would be able to help them close the gap with the additional $500,000.
Right, thank you.
Council Milonazo.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the city manager. Can you drill down a little bit for me in the FY13, the difference between the projected DESE of almost $2 million, and it ended up being $3.8 million? I mean, the difference, as you indicated in the chart, was $1.8 million. Why that huge difference? I mean, and again, I think, you know, to drill down, to really kind of talk about what contributed to that.
Well, I think that what contributed to that, as I said earlier, was the health insurance was very big. The retiree health insurance, when we moved to the GIC, there were just so many questions as to how big it was going to be. I think we estimated at the time it was going to be roughly $4.9 million that we were going to save. Mm-hmm. And I think when all was said and done, we saved in excess of $7 million. So that was a big chunk of it right there. Okay. And most of that was in the retiree portion, mm-hmm. because they didn't go to the higher price plans. The other part of it was energy. We saved quite a bit. You know, that Amoresco project has saved the city a substantial sum of money. Buying energy through a third party has saved us quite a bit of money. There were a drop-off, too, in the DPW work orders. That's why we feel we can catch up on that. Mm-hmm. So those are the main factors that drove that down. And the $1 million that we put in, probably wasn't enough. I don't want to, that's where we kind of get into the area of, should we have pushed that $1 million more? We felt $1 million was good if we could have put $1.5 million or $2 million in, but if we'd done that, then we would have run up against what we were trying to achieve on the tax side.
Okay.
As I said earlier, it's a very complex.
Right. No, and it is, and I appreciate the comments and the plan that you put forward tonight. But weren't we getting from Mr. Moses and from our auditor updates on a quarterly basis as to where we were with the budget going through each fiscal year?
Yes.
And why didn't we notice that the numbers that are contributing to this deficit were off, say, during the beginning of the third quarter of FY13? Is there a reason we...
Well, you wouldn't see necessarily, you might see that the health insurance costs were tracking very well. You would see that at that point, you wouldn't see the energy costs.
Okay.
You also wouldn't necessarily see the work orders.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't get picked up until after the books all close.
Okay.
But you'd see the health insurance tracking well, and I think we did report that out to the council at the time, that the health insurance was doing very well. I'd have to go back, but I almost think we moved some money around out of that account during that period of time.
Okay.
But what we know is that the health insurance was tracking well. We don't necessarily know where the health insurance is tracking. Is it tracking on actives, or is it tracking on retirees?
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Council. Council Leahy?
Thank you. We can all understand the complexity of this and appreciate the explanation, so that answers my motion and Councilor Samaras' motion, who couldn't be here tonight. And I thank you for this. I appreciate it. I'd have to disagree about the amount of money. I'm sure we could spend the $3.3 million if we had it. Having 3 children in the school system, I know that there's a need, for the computers and the resources and the smart boards, not necessarily putting this towards personnel costs, but just for the one-time purchases. So the $2 million will go a long way in both helping us reduce this and helping the school department with their needs. So I appreciate your response to this. It was quick. We may not all agree on the way we got here, but at least we're addressing it now. And I appreciate the effort, so thank you very much.
Mr. Manager?
Well, and I thank you, Councilor, and I think that there's only a certain amount that any department can spend through the procurement process, and I think and I think it's something that's affordable. And the other point I would make, and I perhaps I didn't say this as directly as I could have or should have or wish I had a few minutes ago. In many respects, this wouldn't be a problem if the city had simply kept the same philosophy that we had for 10 plus years of, not trying to hit net school spending, or not, doing that. I mean, I don't recall that ever being an issue here in the city of Lowell. No one really talked about, a desire to hit net school spending. That certainly wasn't put on the front burner when I became city manager.
Well, to be fair, I think on the school committee side, being there for 10 years from, I think, 01 to 10, that was an issue. When I first got on, we were making drastic cuts, and, but, not going to debate that. It was, sure, and I can understand where you're coming from, but, yeah, we appreciate that, this administration really made it a priority and got us up there. It's never enough money in a city of Lowell, the needs and what you could do with that money, but, there's so many needs and so much going on in our school department that we could always use more money. But, I appreciate everything that you've done, and I appreciate the explanation tonight.
Thank you, Council.
Councilman Kennedy, then Councilman Mercia.
Well, it's probably worth pointing out that there's just 4 months left in the fiscal year too, right? So that the $2 million is right.
Correct.
So
Yeah,
like
that's a great point.
You made a comment, you made a couple of comments actually about the health insurance. And so are we tracking the health insurance now? And to what extent, if we are? And if we're not, then how come we aren't? It seems like, especially since we've just come over, it seems like it would be prudent to watch it closely in the first couple of years. So can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, I think that right now we're tracking pretty much close to budget. We maybe just a little bit below budget right now. So that sort of ran through the system that first year. Of knowing where people were going to fall when they went into the different plans. Keep in mind, before we switched over, we had HMO Blue and Master Medical, and in the school department, it was primarily Master Medical, and that carried over into the retirees from the school department as well. And so then when we opened up the GIC, when we went that route, that suddenly put out there 10 different plans. Who knew where anyone was going to necessarily fall? So they was no longer going to be Blue Cross. If there'd been Blue Cross still out there, our numbers would have been pretty good because people would have stayed with that. But suddenly they could go to Harvard, or they could go to Unicare, Tufts, Fallon, and different variations within each one. And we just couldn't tell where people were going to end up.
And so are we finding now that employees are starting to go for a more expensive plan?
We're seeing a little bit of a shift upwards. I don't think it's overly dramatic, but we've seen a few people start to switch off to the more expensive.
10%, 20% of the people?
I think it's probably under 10.
Okay. Do you think that that's happening because they find that the coverage for the cheaper plans is just not adequate?
I think the coverage is fine. What happens, though, is I know that some people, find that there's their premiums drop off dramatically, but they suddenly start getting hit with deductibles.
Yeah.
And if they really ran the numbers, they would see that they're still saving money, but it's that extra check that you have to send out. Now, there is a mitigation fund, and there's also, there's a way that you can set up a fund within the city to pay that out of on a pre-tax basis, but that becomes somewhat cumbersome, so they look for the ease of just doing that.
Yeah, okay. Thanks.
Council Marcia?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to the city manager, when we provide net school spending to the schools, snow removal is a part of that, would it be?
Yes.
With all the snow we've had, we haven't exceeded that already? You would think that we
Well,
already-
I think we'll pick up this year. I think in 14 we will pick up,
I
absolutely.
think you're right.
Yep.
I mean, every time you turn around, every other day, there's a snowstorm. But having said that, is there like a ledger that is kept through the school department, through Jay Lang, where he would say, well, this much has been attributed to the net school spending? Is there such a thing that there's like a balance sheet?
There's there's what's known as a Schedule 19 that he files in the fall, which is a ledger that shows how much they spent. Now, their entire school budget doesn't go to net school spending. Transportation, for instance, does not count to net school spending. And then capital does not go to net school spending. So we could be building beautiful classrooms, but that doesn't count. But what we're paying, if we decided to turn on the heat and open all the windows, that would count to net school spending.
Well, another example is what I understand. If we have a fire drill and the fire department goes over there, that's not attributed to net school spending. But if we have a program in place whereby the fire department go over and teach the children about fire safety, wouldn't that be net school spending per se?
I think so. I'll defer to the auditor.
I don't believe so, because we already pay the firefighters. If the firefighters were stationed at the school and only worked at the schools, it'd be one thing, versus
Like
they're
the
already getting paid
resource,
through the fire
like the
department.
resource officers, net school
Right.
spending?
They are.
Right.
Correct.
Okay, so, but I think that if someone in the school department, namely Jay Lang, is aware of we need to step it up, wouldn't he have a red light that would signal us to know where we are, like a...
Sure. Yeah, and
So
that's one of
can't we be aware of this now in the future as
Well-
to we're not close enough, or we're too far below, or...
Well, again, I think with the city is, and the shame of all the discussion that's gone on in the last couple of weeks about this is that it sort of has ignored the tremendous progress that's been made here in the city with meeting net school spending, and the cooperative relationship between the administration and the auditor and Jay Lang has been outstanding. We have we have an agreement. There's actually a signed memorandum of agreement as to how to calculate the split of resources. There's quite a bit of work to go, hand in hand. Last spring, when we were doing the budget, initially we had $1 million in for the schools, another $1 million. Clearly, with that letter that we received, we felt that we were going to have to go up, and Jay and Superintendent Franco came and they met, and Patrick, Mayor Murphy, met with Mr. Moses and myself to go through the budget, and the concern was raised about net school spending, and we had a lengthy discussion, and that's what resulted in the $2.5 million being put in. So yes, we tried to get ahead of that, but in that case, we were still $400,000 behind. Now, as you say, the snow, the building issues, that would have got us that $400,000.
And as Councilor Leahy said, don't underestimate the spending of the school committee, because Dave Conway, Connie Martin, they certainly would know how to spend
They know
that
how to
money.
spend money, right.
And we're talking about at the Riley School, they need kindergartens, first grade, more classrooms.
The challenge there is that there are programs you want to put in the schools, like getting some more librarians, doing the kindergarten, the first grade, putting the some math resource people out there. But those are all continuing expenses. So you put $3.8 million out there that will fund them only for the next 4 months, or you could give it all to them next year. We'd fund them all through the year, but what do you do the following year? Because this is only catch up for that 1 year. You need to have recurring revenue to pay recurring costs. But
Quickly
Councilor
add
Morrissey?
one thing before I switch. I do want to you make a good point, Council, but there is good communication going on between the school department and the city administration. I think sometimes, too, it's just when we calculate at the end of the year the net school spending on maintenance and snow plowing, and this year the savings in electricity, because maybe 5 years ago, the school department switched over their energy costs to the city side. So we don't on the school side, they don't actually pay an electric bill anymore, a gas bill. So I think that all contributes too. But so I do think over the last few years, it's been good communication between both sides. So just want to stress that.
thank you, Counselor. And along the lines of the electricity, I'm glad you brought that up. We did. There was and that was part of the cooperation, but also became part of an issue for us here. If it had been in that school, we took it over to this side because we felt that there was going to be savings, and we could lower that dollar amount. And the school department was concerned that there wouldn't be adequate savings. Those were the years we were ahead of net school spending. And so we said, we think you can carve back your budget because energy costs should go down. And there was a concern that that wouldn't happen. And so we said, well, look, we'll assume the risk for you. We'll take it. And we moved it out. And when we ended up doing better than what even we thought, it stays on the city side. If it had been in the school budget, that would have been money that then could have been reallocated within the schools. But it was an effort to, again, cooperate, and that was the result of it.
Councilor Leahy, would you take the chair?
Mayor Elliott?
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. I will be brief because I think much has been said, and we have a report, and we actually have a recommendation on how to solve the problem. And well, my concern was, and the reason why I brought the letter up, because it was my responsibility to do so when it came to my office. I'm not sure when you were going to tell the council, Mr. Manager, but knowing that I found that letter and it was not delivered to my office, I thought it was important to bring it forward. And if there, and not only that, but the last budget presented to the city council did include an additional $1 million. And then on top of that, an additional 1.5. And we were never told at that particular point in time that we had received a letter the prior year from the Department of Education saying there was a $2+ million deficit. I think that's where the council was kept in the dark, and that is what's frustrating. So we understand that the process is challenging, and that the end of year student pupil expenditure report is filed in September. The council had no knowledge of this program, of this problem. So I do feel we were misled, and the notion that the city council does not want to meet its net school spending, I submit, Councilor Martin, almost every budget hearing specifically asks that question, to ask where we are when we're discussing that line item from the school department. So I don't think that's an accurate statement. It's before us because we received a letter from the Department of Education saying if you don't fund and meet your net school spending requirement, your Chapter 70 money is in jeopardy. So I think that warrants bringing this to the council. I'm glad we're making an adjustment to solve this problem, to show DOE that we are aware of it and we are correcting this problem and moving forward into the next fiscal year. So it would have been good to know about this multi-year and multi-million-dollar problem, and we have a solution that we're going to correct it. We did get a report from Mr. Lang, and they were tracking it. They were tracking it very closely. You know, the city's cash contribution since 2009 went from 18 million down to a low in 2011 of a little under 12 million. Went up a little bit in 13 with the deficit. I mean, luckily, we did receive federal funds, Mr. Manager, because to go from 18 to 12 is a huge hit. We understand it was the Great Recession, and the federal government stepped in and provided $4 million. But the city's cash contribution dipped significantly. And then there was an MOU signed in 2011 where we did a better job in allocating costs, and the non-cash contributions went up $3 million. So I just wanted to come down and make that point. That is the reason why the council didn't know about it. And if the council knew about it, I'm sure we would have, having funding at that time from the savings in healthcare and municipal lien auctions and other areas that we were receiving significant savings, we would have made sure we funded the net school. So I'm glad we have this solution, and I'm glad we're moving forward and addressing it now and in the future budget. Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair.
Councilor Rourke?
The Vice Chair, through to the Manager. Mr. Manager, how did you come up with the number of $2 million? What was your thinking behind 2 million instead of 2.5, 1.5? What was your thinking behind that number?
Again, there's only 4 months left in the year, and I had some conversations with the school department, and there were some numbers that were out there that of what they could use for technology, and that seemed to be a good amount to cut it almost in half, and around the area, you know, a little bit above actually what I think they indicated they needed for technology, but it was just a round number.
Did you be satisfied with that number?
They've communicated to me that, thanks.
Great, thank you. All right.
Any further discussion?
Roll call.
Oh, roll.
Motion to adopt.
Counselor Martin?
Thank you. This is I've been sitting here for a few years now, and it takes some time to get these formulas and the way the system works to understand it. So I think for the public's point of view, there may not be a lot of understanding. So to my point, though, is, in this entire period that we're talking about, if you go back, say, 20 years to 1992, that is around the time that the legislature adopted the Education Reform Act. And I think, to the legislature's great credit, it has kept its promise to students in Massachusetts. There has been, throughout this entire period where we're talking about budget shortfalls, increases, decreases, the trajectory of spending on schools has been a huge upward trend. And here in the city, from year to year, year-over-year spending continues to rise. And I think we see the benefit of that, too, in state test scores. Massachusetts is now consistently at the top nationally in reading and math, and now science scores. So we are, I think, as a state, benefiting tremendously from that spending. But people should understand that the spending is going up. We are getting a return on that spending, but it's going up. It's going up every year, and it's going up every year in the city. The city's contribution, ironically, during that time, oftentimes goes down. As Councilor Elliott just mentioned, in the period of the recession, the school department had other sources of funds, right? The federal funds came in. The state, even through the recession, has kept its commitment to funding the schools, which sometimes creates stresses on other parts of the city government, because as the state keeps its promise to education, it hasn't necessarily funded us at the same levels of increase with local aid and the like. So we've had stresses here to continue to meet our commitments to the schools. But I think, for the most part, we've done that. And even in the years where we were riding around the 5% mark, some of those years were years of tremendous increase in Chapter 78 to the schools. So they weren't necessarily suffering during that time. So I think, Mr. Manager, you said, the shame of this discussion, and I don't view it as a shame, but I think one thing that should not be lost is, I think, the tremendous progress that the state overall has made toward funding education in cities in particular, because I think cities have benefited tremendously financially from the Education Reform Act. And so, it's harder to educate students here sometimes. They come with different disabilities, they speak different languages, it takes more time, more effort, more money sometimes. But I think the state has benefited, the students of the city have benefited, and I wouldn't want it to be seen, that there are spending increases every year, in spite of this discussion that we're having tonight, and we do need to make these adjustments. The state requires us to make the adjustments, and I'm happy to see the plan to do that. But I think the broader picture here and the bigger story is that we are meeting our commitment to educate the students here in the city, and I think the legislature has done its part in doing that really across the state, but with a particular emphasis on cities.
Thank you. Good point. So do we need a motion for
Yes.
So we need a motion for the motion by Mayor Elliott, seconded by Councilman Lazo. Roll call.
Mayor Elliott.
What's this?
Oh,
Transfer.
for the transfer.
Motion to approve the transfer.
Mayor Elliott.
Yes.
Councilor Kennedy.
Yes.
Councilor Leahy.
Yes.
Councilor Martin.
Yes.
Councilor Mercia.
Yes.
Councilor Milonazo.
Yes.
Councilor Rourke.
Yes.
Councilor Samaras. Councilor Belanger.
Yes.
8 yeas.
Mayor.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilor Kennedy?
I don't think we took a vote on my motion or Councilor Leahy and Councilor Samaras' motion, which are...
Okay, so Councilor Kennedy's motion is 10-5. All those in, motion to accept. A motion was made by Councilor Kennedy, seconded by Councilor Belanger. Okay, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
I'll second Council Leahy's motion with Council Samaras, since Council Samaras isn't here.
So that's 10.3. Okay, yeah, that motion doesn't need a second, but why don't we just read it? Council Leahy, Council Samaras request city manager to discuss plans to address the school budget shortfall prior to his departure. He did do that. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Back to the agenda. Okay, item 7-1. Under ordinances from the city manager. It's a quarterly traffic ordinance. Motion to refer to a public hearing by Councilor Mercia, second by Councilor O'Rourke. That public hearing will be on March 11th at 7 p.m. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Item number 8-1, report from the zoning subcommittee. Council.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll be brief. The zoning subcommittee met this evening at 5:30. In attendance, myself, Councilor Belanger, Councilor Kennedy, as well as Councilor O'Rourke, Councilor Leahy, and Councilor Rita Mercier. We had a number of speakers this evening. The topic was to talk about the proposed transitional retail zoning district along Rogers Street between Phoenix Avenue and up to Wentworth Avenue. And I think, as Councilor Belanger put it best, what we heard this evening was compromise, that the sides, if you will, and it's always difficult when you're dealing with two sides of an issue, are willing to sit and meet again and talk about compromise as it relates to changing part of the regional retail to transitional retail, although we're not, again, sure if the word transitional will be used in the end. But overall, it was a very good meeting. We had about a dozen speakers speak before the zoning subcommittee. And again, I just bring this forward as a report of progress. We're probably going to meet again in 2 to 3 weeks. We were able to collect a lot of the names and addresses of the stakeholders this evening, and working through Adam Bakey's office, we'll be able to get additional information out to those interested parties. And I would encourage people that are certainly interested in this issue to get back in touch with Adam Bakey's office and make sure that their names and addresses through the city clerk's office, we have those, because we really want to make this an inclusive process going forward. And the zoning subcommittee is pleased to report, as a report of progress, that we're moving in the right direction, and we'll get back together in probably 2 to 3 weeks, Mr. Mayor. So I'll offer that as a report of progress.
Thank you, Councilor Malinazzo. Any further discussion on the subcommittee report? Councilor Belanger.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. I have to echo Chairman Malinazzo, the zoning subcommittee. He did a fantastic job this evening. It was a very different sentiment in the chambers here tonight than I saw last November, December, when it died here on the floor, where tensions were very high. It seemed to be one side against the other. What we saw tonight was both sides, very willing to reach a common ground, and not that it was going to happen tonight, but I see it happening in the very near future, reaching a compromise that's going to be acceptable to both sides. So I think we're well on our way, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor O'Rourke.
There'll be a public safety subcommittee, Councilor Belanger, Councilor Mercier. At that point in time, Superintendent Taylor will deliver his reorganization of the police department, including the community policing program, and also some of his new initiatives for the city. So all are encouraged to attend, and I'm looking forward to the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. I just want to entertain a motion to accept the report from the zoning subcommittee. Motion by Councilor Kennedy, seconded by Councilor Leahy. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? So ordered. Public Safety Subcommittee meeting next Tuesday. Councilor Leahy.
Thank you. I just want to comment on the zoning meeting also, just that thank you to everybody that showed up tonight. Everybody's shown a willingness to compromise, and I know that's been a long process, as Council Belanger has said, and, everybody feels that they have a little bit to lose and they have a little bit to gain on this, so coming up with a good solution in the next few months will put everybody at ease, and we can understand their interests, the business owners with the neighborhood. So the meeting went very well, and everybody's understanding and that we're taking our time with this to make sure we get it right. So I just wanted to comment on that. And then I did want to offer a report on yesterday's meeting at Middlesex Community College.
Council.
Thank you. So yesterday I attended a meeting that was held at Middlesex Community College. It was City of Lowell Critical Infrastructure Forum put on by Middlesex Community College with Terrence Downs in the city manager's office, along with Henry, did a great job. So speakers at the event were National Grid. They spoke about the infrastructure for gas and electricity. We also had our department head from water, Dan Laeth, and from wastewater, Mr. Mike Stewart spoke. Basically, the meeting was about 3 hours long. We had a good explanation on the infrastructure in the city of Lowell, improvements, how National Grid and our departments can work together to make the city better in the long run. And we talked about how we deal with storms coming up and major catastrophes, and we're well set, we're well organized in the city, I must say. And I also wanted to note that the wastewater department especially thanked the support and basically all the support that they get from the city council over the last few years with the votes we took, and how we're really moving ahead with our wastewater system, and a lot of good things coming ahead, especially working on, I think it's the Reed Street pump station once we get that up. So it was a good meeting, and we're well set for the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Any further reports? I just wanted to, while we're under reports, and it's not a report, but it's setting up a special meeting. We all have on our desk tonight the deadline for the submission of the auditor applications closed, and we have the resumes on our desk. So I didn't know if members wanted to consider setting up a special meeting for next Tuesday to discuss the process on this.
I think we have a couple of subcommittee meetings next Tuesday, though.
Next Tuesday, we want to do it next Monday? What is the wish of the body? Because I also know that the deadline will be this Friday for the city manager, so just thought that I'd raise this now and have a discussion on setting up a special meeting to go over the terms, things like that. Council Kennedy?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, let me suggest a week from this Thursday. That would give us a little over a week to go over the resumes that we have and maybe come in and be able to formulate a plan for moving ahead with the auditor's process. So that works for me, I think. I don't know how it is for everybody else, but so I would move that we meet a week from this Thursday at 5:30.
Week from this Thursday. Council Rourke?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, with the closing of the application process for the city manager as well, I believe that's this Friday.
Correct.
Should we do both on that Thursday date?
I think it makes some sense to at least, all we're going to do is go over the terms and, the number of applicants that we have and how long it's going to take to set up, just some logistics.
That's a good idea from Council Rourke, I think.
Council Martin?
I think a number of us had been invited to an event honoring the city manager next Thursday. That probably some of us are going to go to.
Okay.
right.
So why don't we go back to Monday? Monday, it's just a meeting to discuss the logistics of what we are going to plan on doing. It's not to discuss the resumes, just to see, how many we got, how many we should consider, the process. So if there's no objection, is there a particular time? I don't think it's going to be a long meeting, but we've done this in the past just to go over simple logistics. 5?
Monday at 5, Mr.
Monday at 5? Okay. Mr. Clerk?
Point of clarity, it's going to be just a motion to discuss the process for selection for the manager and the city auditor on a special meeting for Monday, March 3rd at 5 p.m. in the chamber.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Moving back to the agenda, item 8.2, report wire inspector, National Grid. It's an electrical main installation on Industrial Ave and Stevens Street. Motion to accept and adopt the accompanying order by Councilor Belanger, seconded by Councilor Kennedy. All those in favor signify by saying aye, and the opposed. Motion carries. Item number 9, petitions. There are 3 claims for property damage. Motion to refer to the law department and report and recommendation by Councilor Martin. Motion by Councilor Martin, seconded by Councilor Rourke. All those in favor signify by saying aye, and the opposed. Motion carries. Moving under the next item of the agenda, City Council motions.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilor Mercia.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to suspend the rules to discuss the need to transition the next person in charge in the auditor's office.
Motion to suspend the rules by Councilor Mercia, second by Councilor Rourke. All those in favor of suspending the rules signify by saying aye, and the opposed. Motion carries. Councilor Mercia?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. We know that there's a transition that should be taking place in the city auditor's office, a transition to the next person. Cheryl, our city auditor, is about to leave very soon, and someone needs to be stepping up to the plate, and I think the role would probably go to Karen O'Byrne. So we need some sort of a discussion about that, to be in the role of acting auditor while Cheryl leaves. I think that we need to discuss what role she plays in this process. Has anyone talked to her about the extra duties that she would be performing? We need to have a plan in place. I think it's only fair to the person in that department that we oversee. We oversee this department. We don't have someone in place there, so I think it's only fair that we discuss that. And
that's a good point. I defer to the city solicitor. By statute, there is a requirement to have an assistant auditor, and in the absence of the appointed auditor, she automatically assumes those responsibilities, Madam Solicitor?
I believe so. I'm not 100% certain. I know the auditor had just stepped out for a second. I can certainly review the Mass General laws just quickly and report back this evening on that.
Okay. As Councilor Mercia mentioned, she just assumes the responsibility until a new auditor has been selected, or do we have to go through the appointment process?
That's what I'll just double check the statute right now.
Okay.
And
Councilor Mercia?
thank you, Mr. Mayor. And while we're under suspension of the rules, and I know the manager is suffering a very bad sore throat, a bad cough, a bad everything, but a number of people have called me over the past 2 days, and I know that I heard the city manager explain this eloquently before, so I'd like to suspend the rules and ask him if he could briefly do a little bit of a summary about the Lowell Community Choice Power Supply Program, because as I'm talking about this to the people that are calling me saying, gee, should I sign off on this? Should I opt out? Should I do this? There's a little bit of a confusion there, and I'm telling them not to, because what I'm thinking is, this is like one of the city's well-kept secrets, and it's quite remarkable because of what transpired in this city hall that renegotiated plans to give discounts to our residents, so.
Okay, understood. Council Martin?
Yeah, before we leave the other topic,
Right.
though, I thought maybe we should just add an agenda item to the Monday evening
Right.
meeting, that if we have to appoint an acting auditor, that is properly advertised, so that if we have to do it then, we'll do it. If it just automatically happens, then we won't have to act on it.
That makes sense. If there's no objection, we'll hear from the auditor, hopefully in the near term, but I think that makes sense. No objection from the members?
I was
Okay.
just trolling for time while the auditor was out of the room. I was trying to segue the next thing while she.
Well, you picked the manager, he'll on that issue, we'll get plenty of time. So on the opt-out electricity charge, Mr. Manager, that was your question, right, Councilor
Yes.
Marcia?
Yes, please, thank you.
The solicitor hasn't found the answer yet.
Okay. Let me know when you've found the answer. No, I'll stop talking. Essentially, what we've done here in the city is it really haven't been many examples of this done within the Commonwealth. There are a few examples. One is down on the Cape Cod Compact, I think it is, where they a number of communities there actually joined together to do what's known as aggregation. And essentially, what we're doing is we're buying in bulk. We made the decision to reach out and investigate whether we could do this. We got the approvals from the Department of Public Utilities. We spent some time talking about this at the City Council chamber at a meeting, actually a couple of meetings. And we went into the market about a month ago, and buying in bulk for all of the residents, we were able to get a rate that was better than what National Grid is currently charging. Now, National Grid is going to change their rates later this spring, and they'll get closer to, or maybe even meet, what we're providing. But right now, I believe it's 2 cents a kilowatt hour. So for the average resident, I believe it's about $20 a month that they could save in their electricity bill. National Grid will then go back up in the fall, in all likelihood, because they change their rates a couple times a year. And we will continue to better the rate that they have. So we think that this is going to save people a couple of $100s a year in electricity costs. And the other benefit is that this is all renewable energy that we're acquiring, buying in bulk. And so it's sort of advances our desire to be a sustainable community. And I think we will be the only green community of this sort in the Commonwealth. So that's something notable, but on top of being notable, it also saves people money. And this is a first step for us. We, down the road, we hope to be able to amend our application to the Department of Public Utilities and get access to the conservation money that National Grid currently charges. People should know that they're not going to get a bill from the city for this electricity. It will come within their National Grid bill. There's a transmission charge and there's a generation charge on your bill. If people look at the bill now, what it will say now is that they'll be in the Lowell program for their generation of electricity, and the transmission will come through National Grid.
So what you would suggest, if people get this opt-out card, just ignore it, right?
We have to give people the right to opt out. And I did see an email from a resident that asked why we didn't do it the opposite, to do opt-in, because the statute provides that it's an opt-out as opposed to opt-in. And so if people don't like the idea of doing this, if they like paying the extra money to, they feel more comfortable with National Grid for some reason, National Grid really doesn't care where they're, I don't want to speak for National Grid, but what they're in the business of now is transmission of electricity as opposed to actually selling the electricity. People buy electricity from all over. The city buys electricity from a different vendor, different even than the one we have here. The university does. Any of the big users do that now to save money, and people can do it at various points in time and buy it depending upon where the market is. So I would. I know that I got one of those,
Yes.
and I've already thrown it away.
Good. That's what I've been telling people when they've been calling me.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Mr. Manager.
Thank you. Council Belanger?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. I do want to commend the manager and his administration for this accomplishment. It's, I believe, one of the first examples in the Commonwealth, correct, Mr. Manager?
That's correct.
That's great, because I think it's a great savings for our residents and businesses, because since November, we've seen increases residentially, $20 to $30, and then commercially, I've seen $300 for my business. So it's very considerable. This is a good savings. And, but question is, what about repairs when the power goes out? Do we call National Grid now? What's the story?
You still call National Grid. They're the ones that maintain the wires, and that's in that transmission charge that they're responsible for that. So you still call, everything is still done through National Grid. It's other than that, other than seeing it on the bill that it comes from, the electricity comes from a different party, it's all the same.
It's about the only change. Okay. Yep. Great job again. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Further discussion? Okay. Moving on to the item of, next item on the agenda, motions. First motion by Council Leahy. Request Rules Subcommittee consider as a recommendation that the mayor's portrait be completed within the first 3 months of his or her inauguration. Second by Council Belanger. Council Leahy.
Thank you. After talking with a few people, I put this motion in. The Rules Subcommittee, I believe, is going to meet on this issue anyway, so I just wanted to bring this up as a suggestion that we talk about it. It makes sense to us that the portrait should be hung while the mayor's in office. That way, when people come up to the office, the portrait's hung. You see it. You should be proud of it while you're there in term, instead of going out the door and then having your picture hung. So as a suggestion, I would bring that up, that it go to the Rules Subcommittee.
Thank you, Councilor. Further discussion on the motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. And the opposed? Motion is referred to the Rules Subcommittee. Next motion by Council Leahy, request City Manager provide update regarding the methadone clinic site on Stedman Street. Second by Councilor Kennedy. Councilor Leahy.
If we could just get an update, still getting some calls from people in the area in the Highlands that are concerned with this, residents that live right around where the proposed site is. This issue, as you know, is controversial, came up kind of fast and hard. So if we could get an update or a status on where we actually are, is it a done deal? Is it there? What's happening? I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Council. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. And the opposed? Motion carries. Next motion was already taken up. We'll move on to 10-4. Council Leahy, Mayor Elliott. Request City Manager and proper department heads, both city and school, involved with snow removal, meet with Municipal Facility Subcommittee to discuss snow removal. On the motion, Council Leahy.
Thank you. Again, on this one, I think I've called maybe once about snow removal this year. So what I'd like to do, we did this a few years ago when I was on the school committee. I'd like to get the department heads together and make sure that we can try to come up with a plan that try to meets everybody's needs. There is another motion on later in the night that discusses snow removal, maybe just in the central district, downtown district, but I do want to have the schools involved with it. I think that it's always good to get everybody on the same page so we know what our expectations are. It's been a tough winter. Everybody's been out working hard, but what bothered me downtown the most was some of the parking spots that were filled up with snow, and we need to just try to do a better job and get those emptied out so that obviously there's more parking downtown for the businesses. So that's what this motion is about. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't have a statement, so if there's no objection from the members, I'd just like to ask the manager a question. Mr. Manager, a couple of years ago, the city purchased I guess what could be termed an oversized snow blower, snow thrower. Is that used on a regular basis, 24/7 to do snow removal? I know the first year we bought it, there was no snow, so we didn't use it. But I do have that question asked on a few occasions.
I don't, we don't use it 24/7, but we do use it in, the circumstances in which we can have piles of snow that we can blow it into the truck. That's generally what we do with it. There are some cases where we blow it off the property, but in some tight areas, it helps us with snow removal to go into the truck. I don't know how many times it's been used this year, but I'd be happy to check on that.
Okay, it just seems I know you need a truck, but whether the truck can be in front or to the side, I don't know if it's a logistical issue, but especially in some of these streets, even the streets that are relatively wide, it just seems it'd be helpful to get a report, because I would think that should be used as much as we can, especially when we get all this snow. Okay, thank you. Council Leahy?
I did want to add, did we have anybody registered to speak on this either? Because I remember a few phone calls, and
There's no one registered to speak, Councilor. Is there someone here that would like to speak?
Yeah, there are, so would
Okay.
we suspend the
Motion to
rules?
suspend the rules by Council Milonazo, seconded by Council Mercia, to allow individuals to speak. Please come to the podium. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye, and the opposed, motion carries. Could you just please state your name? and
Yes, my
address
name
for
is
the
John
record?
Bertos. I own a property on 144 Merrimack Street for the last 25 years.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor, I think this is the wrong motion. We're still in the school. We're not on that motion yet. We're not on the Central Business District motion.
Yeah, the downtown, yeah.
Right, I think Mr. Bertos, which is fine, is speaking on the downtown motion. The motion that was before us was the
Snow removal
facility
down.
subcommittee to discuss snow removal.
This is about snow removal.
But there are two motions.
Central
Right.
business.
This is the Central Business District, so
Okay, there are two separate motions. This one specifically is about snow removal, well, in the city and the school. There is another motion. Did you want to speak on this one, or did you want to speak on or it didn't matter? You just want to get the snow removed?
Mr. Mayor, do you want to combine the motions?
Right.
But I'd like to speak on the motion after Mr. Bertros.
Okay, is there any objection to combining the motions, considering that one is Council Kennedy's, one's Council Leahy's? Why don't we just take up that one as well? That is item number 10.7. Motion by Council Kennedy.
it's actually 10.6.
I got
6 and 7.
Oh, excuse, 6 and 7.
6 and 7.
No, you're right, it's 7.
Do we want to take up all the, yeah, no, it's 10.7. Council Kennedy requests city manager instruct the DPW commissioner create an improved plan for snow removal in the Central Business District, seconded by Council Milonazo. Mr. Bertros.
Okay. The question came just a couple of minutes ago about the snow blower. There was a time that the time snow at night, in the morning, there was no snow downtown. Seems like right now, and I'm sorry to have to say this, that I don't think anybody cares for downtown. Because downtown this year, the snow hasn't been removed from the sidewalks, not even once. Not even once. I have seen people falling right into try to put money in the mirrors and falling right into the snow. Just last week along, a lady was outside my place, and she fell right in the snow. I helped her to get up, and then I say, can I help you? Where you like to go? He says, me, I'm going back home. I never come back downtown again. So I don't see why. The only thing I see downtown is that the small plow that will go and plow half of the sidewalk. I mean, with the sidewalks about 10 to 15 feet wide, and it will open a path about 4 feet wide, and it's all it's done. I mean, like you see right now, you can even see never mind the sidewalk, you can see the mirrors. The time the plows come by, the street is about 30 feet wide, and once the snow plows go by, the street comes down to about 18 feet wide, because it is so much snow left into on the street. I talked with Mr. Snow just about a month ago, and Mr. Snow, the next day, he says, oh, we have a plan that we will pick up the snow. True, the next day, they plow close to the sidewalk, but they never did anything on the sidewalks. And that's where all the people goes. They want to go shopping, and they can't go no place. And I don't see, I've been in there for almost 25 years. I pay the city almost $1 million with taxes. And I'd just like to know what my money goes for it. I pay $1 million taxes from downtown. What does the city does for me? They're not even cleaning the snow from the street. We're losing customers. We're losing people. We're losing businesses. One business just closed about a couple of weeks ago, and the 3 more, they're ready to go right now. So I don't know if anybody cares for downtown.
I assure you, we care about the town, Mr. Burchos. Mr. Manager.
No, I agree. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We do care about the downtown, and it has been a tough winter, snowstorm after snowstorm, and just being able to put the guys out there. But I think Councilor Kennedy's motion is well intended and one that we will go back and work on a different plan. One of the issues that we do have, I will tell you, is we were down there just the other night removing some snow, and the issue of being able to dispose of it is problematic. It used to be years ago you could just dump it in the canal, and now we have to bring it over behind the condominiums over on Canal Place, and it causes issues over there. So it's becoming a challenging. It's becoming more and more challenging for that. But let us do some work on that. And believe me, as the mayor said, we do care about the downtown. And I know that there's a business closed. There's also a couple businesses that have just opened down there.
Yes, it's a tobacco store open.
Right,
You know,
right.
everybody
Right.
stops to selling tobacco, but we have a tobacco store coming downtown.
Right.
You know,
But we do care about it, and I will meet with the DPW commissioner, and we'll be working on that.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor,
Council Kennedy, then Council Milonazo.
on my motion,
Yes.
which it's kind of messed up the sequence. I really wanted them to go in a different type of order, but nevertheless, that's how it goes. Mr. Burchos has had a building downtown. He has a substantial building on Merrimack Street, as you know, Mr. Manager, for a long time. And there's a problem with snow removal down there. Now, I don't know if maybe I don't remember hearing that there was a problem last year or the year before, but there's been a problem this year. And so it might be as simple as there's a different contractor downtown. However, the city needs to be more friendly towards the downtown community and needs to provide adequate snow removal for them. The whole reason that we have a parking ban downtown is for snow removal. If we're not gonna remove the snow properly, we don't need to do the parking ban. And this is a little side thing, but I think last Saturday or the Saturday before, there was snow. And so the parking ban was put on at 4 o'clock, which meant that there was a parking ban in place on a Saturday night. And maybe that couldn't be helped, but some thought should have gone into maybe having the parking ban start at 1 o'clock or at the end of business on a Saturday night. I think for Council Belanger and for a bunch of other people is probably their big night. And to put a parking ban on maybe when it's not needed or when it could be done at a different time, I think that overall what Mr. Burchos is asking for, what I'm asking for, is we need to be a little bit more friendly and sensitive to what goes on downtown. It's a struggle down there, and they need whatever help that they can get. They certainly don't need for us to be putting roadblocks in. And so my motion specifically, which is a little different from Council Leahy's motion, ask that Commissioner Snow look at the plan downtown and see if there's a much better way of doing it than the way it's done now. And that's kind of it in a nutshell for now.
And I agree with that motion. I will say the snow ban isn't to do the snow removal, it's to get cars off so that they can push the snow into the sidewalk. The question then is, how do you get the snow off the sidewalk and out of there? And that's a challenge on a number of different levels. But I agree that we should work on a plan for that.
Council Milonazo, then Council Belanger.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I couldn't agree with Mr. Burtos and with Councilor Kennedy more on this. In fact, the manager and I had a conversation the other day about the snow removal in the downtown, and quite frankly, I'm pretty disappointed in the snow removal in the downtown, because over the past few years, maybe as Mr. Burtos said, you know, it would snow and you come downtown the next morning and the snow would be gone. So we obviously were doing something back a couple of years ago, and last winter was a bad winter, where the snow was actually being, at night, put in trucks and hauled away. And for some reason, we're not doing this. I don't know if it's because right after it snows, it gets bitterly cold, and the machines just aren't able to move the snow. But, you know, again, I'm very disappointed in the quality of the snow removal in downtown. And I do think that the downtown needs that added help in order to be able to bring customers downtown and be able to readily park at a meter. Right now, you still can't. You still can't park at a meter. I was down there today, and you still can't park downtown. So, and then with the delivery trucks, you know, still delivering any time of the day, you could have traffic backed up because they're out in the travel lane on Merrimack Street and backing traffic up again through Kearny Square. So it's something that I'm going to support Councilor Kennedy's motion. It's something that we need to have Commissioner Snow report back to the manager as to why the snow is being let remain in the downtown. So I agree with Mr. Burtos. Thank you.
Council Belanger, then Council Rourke.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I do intend on supporting both motions, knowing firsthand how problematic it is, and I understand the impact of this winter has been awful. It's been a bad winter, but it just a few things do not make sense to me. Where we're calling for parking bans, where we're enforcing parking bans in the downtown on a Saturday night. Okay, but I'm receiving emails that week from residents in Pawtucketville, Centerville, the Highlands, saying the parking bans are not being enforced on my street, along with phone calls. So it seems like we're only enforcing it where the businesses are, which makes no sense. You know, it's awful when you have to, for anybody downtown, to have clear their business out to go move cars. Very rarely they'll come back in. You figure that they pretty much just call it a night. So it is very, very detrimental. And I'm speaking for the whole downtown as a whole. So it has been a problem. These snowbanks have not been removed. I can't remember in recent history being downtown for 13 years where it's been, the snowbanks have not been removed. I know it's been one storm after another. I know, Mr. Manager, you've been criticized for removing snow at the wrong times. I do recall that. I don't pretend it's easy, but we've got to find a medium ground here. The streets are extremely narrow. Middle Street in general can take lots of time. If somebody's simply opening a car door on the passenger side, you have to wait. I don't know how even an emergency vehicle can fit down Middle Street right now with the snowbank. So I think the problem is pretty serious, and we need to get on it right away. So I do support both motions, but we need to work on that snow ban, the timing of it, and the downtown should be an exception to the rule for all businesses that on weekend nights and where, you know, we depend heavily on, should be till 2 a.m. when the businesses are open, and then the crews can just attack it all at once. We're not talking about a large geographical area here. We should give the businesses that benefit. So I think that needs to be looked at. But this is a good start by Councilor Leahy and Councilor Kennedy. I do support both motions, but I think it gets a little deeper. But let's start with getting the snow out of the downtown for right now. So I look forward to the manager's report. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Council. Council Rourke.
I plan to fully support both motions, and getting back to Council Milonazo and Council Belanger's comments, you know, personal stories. I know, Mr. Manager, that the timing of the storms have been horrible this year, and I know the DPW guys are working probably 16, 20 hours, and they need their rest as well. But, you know, for example, the weekend before Christmas, we had a large storm, and trying to get downtown, parking on Merrimack Street, you know, having, you know, 2 young children, they have to get out on the street side because the snow is so high on the meter side, and that's up and down Merrimack Streets, on side streets as well. And again, this past weekend for Winterfest, you know, the city's marquee event, again, you know, we drove downtown, and, you know, the children have to, you know, having young kids, they have to get out on the Merrimack Street side of the way we do park. So, you know, maybe something for Mr. Snow to take into account, where as well as a sidewalk is very important as well. The city's maybe losing revenue if they can't use the meters, if it's during the daytime and so forth. But, you know, it is a safety concern, people getting out on, middle of the street. And, that would be hopefully a suggestion that something can be done as soon as possible with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Further discussion?
When,
Councilor Martin?
I mean, I don't want to pile on snow pile here, but I actually did see some equipment moving snowbanks out of downtown, but it was on Arcan Drive, and I said, geez, why would you start on Arcan Drive and not Merrimack Street? I presume that maybe was because of Winterfest and trying to do some setup there, so we had that complication as well. So I think everybody agrees that this is something we need to do a better job at, so I certainly agree with that. And since Councilor Rourke mentioned Winterfest and I did, I just want to say thank you for the people that volunteered. We get a good group of volunteers, and we have certainly generous sponsors, so appreciate the efforts of those folks at Winterfest. I saw most of our colleagues at different events over the weekend, and I thought it was a job well done. We appreciate the support for that.
Agreed. All those in favor of both motions signify by saying aye, and the opposed, both motions carry. Okay, we already completed 10-5. Moving on to 10-6, motion by Councilor Kennedy and Councilor Leahy. Request Mayor create a City Council subcommittee dedicated to working with merchants and property owners to enhance and improve the commercial environment in the Central Business District. Second, not necessary. Who's going first?
Yeah,
Councilor Kennedy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll just be brief on this. Councilor Leahy and I thought it would be a good idea to form a new subcommittee that would just be focused on the downtown. That maybe that subcommittee could look at or could consult with real estate retail developers, with marketing people, and try to bring the downtown community of business owners closer together and form them into a more cohesive group, and to provide a conduit between the downtown community and the city for things like snow removal. But there are other items, cleanliness, streets, cleaning the sidewalks and so forth. There's a whole bunch of things. And so I really think that although this would be a 19th subcommittee, that at least to try this for, say, a 22-month period for the term of this council and to see how effective it could be would certainly be worthwhile. And I do believe that although we have a subcommittee on economic development, that downtown deserves its own special focus, and that this council should help provide a special focus for that subcommittee. And so that's the reason for the motion.
Councilor Leahy.
Thank you.
Then Councilor Rourke.
Thank you. When we talked about this motion, the point was to focus on the downtown. A week ago, we were preparing this, or a couple of weeks ago, Councilor Belanger brought in a motion about the task force. We were in the process of putting this together. So my thought was, I want to work with Councilor Belanger's motion, but what I really wanted to do is focus on the downtown area and talking with the business owners down there, everybody that has a stake, the residents. But what's going to come out of it also is that when we're having the discussions on downtown, it's going to blossom out into other sections of the city. So, for example, right now we're trying to find out where to put this recycling station. Downtown it was going to start, and now it's going to go somewhere out into the neighborhoods. So that's the idea of this. What should downtown look like in the next 10 years? How are we relating it to UMass Lowell? What are we doing? We have a lot more residents downtown now, and they have to live and work with the business owners downtown. But how are we going to define downtown? And that's what I'm hoping comes out of this if the motion passes. Thank you.
Council Rourke
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
and
Actually,
Council Belanger.
Councilor Leahy mentioned what I was going to say about Councilor Belanger's motion a couple of meetings ago about a task force for downtown. I'm sure there'll be plenty of volunteers in this council that would gladly be part of this subcommittee, so I will support the motion. Thank you.
Council Belanger.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You know, I seen this motion, I know we got the meeting canceled last Tuesday, but I seen the motion that Friday before and thinking, you know, it may be a bit repetitive, but after speaking with Councilor Kennedy, I think he described the motion very, very well, that, you know, it does differ from the mayor appointing a task force where that will mainly be, you know, a group of business leaders discussing initiatives to carry out that I will sit on myself, and of course, my colleagues are always welcome, that hopefully what comes out of that is initiatives and ideas to carry out, to bring to this council and bring to planning and development to bring into fruition. So it does, Councilor Kennedy's motion does differ from my task force in the sense of public forums where we can host public hearings here in the council chambers. We can organize all businesses, residents, all stakeholders to the table, get their input as well, because they're stakeholders at the same time. So I think it, you know, there are some similarities to my motion a few weeks ago about appointing a task force, but I think this enhances it at the same time. So I think it's a good motion. I do support it, and that's all I have to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Council. Council Milonazo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think it's a good motion, one that I'm going to support. As you know, we have the Downtown Lowell Business Association, we have the Lowell Downtown Neighborhood Association, we have the Jackson Appleton Middlesex Street group. So I think that this particular subcommittee, if this motion gets approved, will be a very good clearinghouse for all three of those groups to really meet and try to get on the same page. And I think that's the intent of the motion, and I think it's a good motion, and I plan to support it. Thank you.
So there further discussion on that motion on the subcommittee. We're going to keep the mayor's task force, that appointment in place. I did send an email, got responses back from some members of the council to get input on that task force. So, Council Belanger, did you have something else?
Oh.
Okay. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. In the opposed, motion carries. Next motion of the evening by Councilor Kennedy. Request city manager and acting city manager begin the process of hiring a CFO to continue to formulate the city budget until a permanent CFO is hired. Second. Seconded by Councilor Rourke. Councilor Kennedy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It just occurred to me that over the past week that we really haven't moved ahead with that, and that rather than to wait until noontime on March 10th, that it might be good to start that process now, but it's not a process that the council can really initiate. It's a process that really has to be done by the acting city manager and the city manager, and we just need to make a determination on what we're going to have. When I filed the motion, I did not realize that the manager was going to have a budget prepared that he would be able to submit to the city council. But even with that, it still would make sense for me to have, for Mr. Geary to have a financial guy at his side during his during his tenure in the city manager's role. And that's the reason for the motion.
Further discussion on the motion. Council Belanger.
Yeah, yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. I'll be brief. I think it's a much-needed service that we're going to need, and I applaud the manager for going this far without a CFO at this point. But nonetheless, there's going to come a time. So let's address it sooner rather than later, as the manager is now counting the days, his tenure here in the city. So nonetheless, a necessary service we're going to need. Thank you very much.
All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Next motion of the night by Councilor Kennedy. Request city manager explain why the city administration and the health department chose not to undertake an RFP process for the city ambulance contract. We have a registered speaker.
We have a second.
Motion by Councilor Kennedy, second by Councilor Belanger. We have a registered speaker.
Dave Daly.
Thank you, fellow councilors and the city administration. First, got to say I've been in this room a couple of times recently, and I got to commend how nice this room came out. The new portraits on the wall and the place being painted, and that bump in the rug that I think they were always trying to trip up Councilor Mercier, and I think we all know no, they can't trip her up. But my name is David Daly, and I've been a lifelong resident of the city of Lowell and a business owner as well. And I come here to you tonight to express some of my consternation about the proposed successor contract for the current provider of EMS services here in the city of Lowell. I want to make it clear that I don't think this should be about the current provider, and I think I want to make it more about the process in the proposed contract. I think it also should be highlighted that a major concern of mine and others in this community has been expressed in the media is the timing of this proposed successor contract. We can't help but notice the fact that this process started a couple months ago actually, and the current city manager was under the, admittedly that he was going to be leaving the city at that time. So the current contract does not expire until another 4 months. And for the fact to rush this thing through, and after reviewing this, I was on vacation until Sunday night. I didn't get a chance to review the new proposed contract. And just over the last couple of days, myself and others in the community have some grave issues with the actual proposed contract. As I indicated, I'm not here speaking on behalf as a competitive ambulance company, but as an EMT and a paramedic and a citizen who has family in this city, and I have concerns about this contract, and I'm going to go through them. My intent is to add my own 2 cents into my concerns, but I'm also going to reflect as a template to my concerns. And my major concerns on this proposed successor contract is the fact that the primary department that deals with the current EMS provider is the fire department. Day in and day out, they send engine companies and fire apparatus that deal with the EMS companies upwards to sometimes 30 or 40 times a day. So if there's any department in this city that knows more about the current EMS provider, it's the fire department. And what's really concerning to me is that on a letter dated December 30th, 2013, from the fire chief to Bernie Lynch, he writes, and I'll read his opening letter, "The provider has been contracted to provide ambulance service for the city of Lowell since 1992, and throughout that time has maintained a strong working relationship with the Lowell Fire Department. The provider is an integral part of the delivery system for emergency medical services within the city, providing quality care to residents and visitors to the city, as well as rehab and medical care to first responders during fire and other emergencies. In preparing to make my recommendations, I consulted with the last 4 fire lieutenants to serve as the EMS coordinator. While patient care has never been an issue with the provider, the response times certainly have. Also, a reluctance to provide response time and other data upon request has certainly been an issue. Enclosed, please find my recommendations for consideration when seeking to negotiate the next contract for private ambulance services for the city of Lowell." Mr. Chief Pitter goes on to highlight 8 points. His first point is, he states, an RFP, a request for proposals, should be developed and put forth according to the city, affording the city the opportunity to consider proposals from multiple contractors. So I guess my first statement is through you, Mr. Mayor, to the city manager. Obviously, I've made my consternations clear here about the fact that the timing on this is very suspect. The manager is going to be leaving this city in the next week and a half, and he's looking to sign a 3-year contract with the current provider, with a 2-year extension. Again, I will make it clear that had I not had reservations with the proposed contract, I wouldn't be here tonight and asking these questions. And more so, that I'm reflecting many of the same strong concerns that the fire chief has. So through you, Mr. Mayor, could I go through the manager why he would?
Mr. Mayor, this is my motion, right? I should have been speaking on this first. So I don't know how long you're gonna let this go, but this is my motion.
Council Kennedy, we typically, if there's a registered speaker, it was up to the maker of the
Not on a
mo-
motion, not on a motion. On a
Counselor.
motion, the maker of the motion should go first.
Okay, you asked for a second, we got a second. If you wanted to speak, I most certainly could have recognized you. Typically, we let the registered speaker go first. He's entitled to 5 minutes, that's our rule, so I certainly was gonna let him go 5 minutes, and we usually let that rule slip as well. So if there's no objection to the maker of the motion, the speaker has a question to the city manager. Mr. Manager?
The question is the fact that this contract expires in 4 months, and you are leaving the city in the next week and a half to 2 weeks. The fact that there's no rush here to re-up this contract or renew this contract, and one can't help but would question the fact that if you had gotten let's say a 3-year extension here at the city with this, the timing of this, through your own touting yourself as an open and transparent city manager, it just doesn't seem logical that you'd be renewing a contract for 3 years, 4 months prior to it being needed to be renewed, and you're leaving in a week and a half. It just doesn't make sense to me or many other people, I gotta be honest with you.
Mr. Manager?
I still haven't heard a question.
The question is, you're signing it,
What's the rush? Why renew the contract 4 months before it's due?
Well, as you've already pointed out, the letter that Chief Pitta sent, as well as the letters that Chief Taylor sent, and it goes back into the late fall, early winter, certainly predating when I made my announcement, or frankly, when I made my decision of when I was leaving. So your accusation that somehow this is being done while I'm walking out the door is false.
Well, okay, I'll let you finish.
Okay.
I thought I heard you say on the radio that
Daly,
sorry.
let the manager finish, and then...
The Board of Health is the one under the city ordinance that's given the responsibility for managing the ambulance contract. That goes back to 1988. And they're doing the work on this, and you know, I've given them the go-ahead to do the work and to come back to me with a recommendation or their decision, and that hasn't been completed yet. The only input I've given them is that you know, there was some talk of, you know, should it be a 5-year, and I indicated no, I think it should be a 3-year, but they're doing the work on that, and they're doing that, and this is to Councilor Kennedy's question. They're doing it based on the fact that the current provider has an excellent track record, by all accounts, and has served the city well. They're a local business that does meet the specifications that the city has always used in the awarding of the ambulance contract, or the decisions regarding the ambulance contract. That they are the only, that they meet the specifications of being a 911 provider, that they have that experience, that we do look for that. The 4th largest city in the Commonwealth certainly should have an ambulance provider that has experience doing 911 calls. And to my knowledge, they're the only ones that actually can say that here in the city of Lowell. They also were requested by the police department and the health department to work with them on expanding their services to deal with issues that have become very clear to us with the recent police cell block case. So, you know, with all of that and the other cooperative efforts that they've had with the city, the health department obviously felt that sitting down and talking to them about the possible successor agreement made sense. And but you know, so hopefully your claims that somehow this is and I should point out, as I'm sure you know, there was an excellent article in the Lowell Sun today about the town of Chelmsford making an award last night of a new deal. I think that may have been a longer contract. Maybe it was just 3 year. For the same reasons that the city of Lowell is exploring this.
And let me explain that. Okay. Can I go, Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Daly?
Sorry, Mr. Manager, I thought I heard you say on the radio that you were going to leave. You had made that decision a couple months ago on the radio a few months ago, that you had already made up your decision to leave the city. Maybe I misheard you.
I had made my decision, just not when I was going to leave.
Okay, but also, secondly, I'm going to outline 7 things that the fire chief outlined in his concerns. And if you can point out to me where they are in the proposed contract, then we won't have a discussion. My intent, and I will make it clear to you, and I'll make it clear to everyone in the city of Lowell, that I am not here to bid on the RFP, okay? I'm here as a citizen and as an EMS provider. I'm also here as someone that has worked in that system, okay? All right? I'm also here as someone that has waited on my company, has been called to the scene after having the primary provider wait 15 to 20 minutes just to get yelled at by the fire department for where were you guys. This has happened on numerous occasions. It happened about a week and a half ago, okay? So secondly, his second point, the contract with the private ambulance provider must mirror the provisions of the service zone plan, which will become law and should not conflict with the contract. As I sent the council in a letter dated August 17th of 2004, they came out with something from a letter to all the chief municipal officers from Paul Dreyer, who is the executive of Health of Human Services. He states that the purpose of this letter is to inform cities and towns of the new statutory and regulatory obligation to develop and submit plans and coordinate the use of pre-hospital resources within the jurisdictions called the Service Zoning Plan. The letter describes the new requirements and presents a tool that cities and towns may use as they develop their plans. The law requires that each jurisdiction, meaning Lowell, be covered by a service zone plan by December 31st, 2006. It further goes on to state that although the municipal manager may elect to defer to a police or fire chief to write the actual service zone plan, okay, which has been now 7.5 years in the making, it says that the municipal executives are ultimately responsible for the service zone plans in their communities. Service zone plans must be signed by the chief municipal official in each community that is party to the plan, regardless of who planned them. For 7.5 years, we should have had the ability to, put a service zone in place. The contract that's now being proposed should mirror the service zone plan. As I noted in my statement, the service zone plan just recently, the last 60 days, got submitted to the state. It still hasn't been approved. So for anyone, including the Board of Health, to rush to approving an EMS contract without getting the service zone plan, which is the EMS blueprint of this jurisdiction, is rushing to judgment.
Thank you, Mr. Daly. Any follow-up, Mr. Manager?
No.
Okay. The third point is
Mr.
the
Daly,
contract should be...
we have a 5-minute rule, so if we can try to stick to it as closely as we can.
I think the last one I'll make then is the fact that, and I'll try to summarize them all, is the fact that in the contract it states that the provider will provide 3 ambulances and 1 ALS unit, not dedicate, but provide. Furthermore, they state even though the fire chief recommended it, that they're opposed to putting GPS systems so that the city can not only monitor the ambulance units, but that also for tracking records and for any conflicts in timing or where response times, that those can't be argued. This is a recommendation by the fire chief. It's one of the things that's in every EMS, big city EMS system that I ever worked in, and it's lacking in this system right now. The third thing is ALS and BLS. Currently, the city has the city provider is proposing to go with a BLS and ALS contract, whereas the Lowell General Hospital, who is an important provider of EMS services, have some of the best paramedics in the state, have a subcontract with the current provider. I think it's clear now that it's time that the city go into a direct contract with Lowell General Hospital, or at least discuss that with them. And I guess my question through Mr. Mayor to the city manager is, has anyone had any discussions about this ALS services with Lowell General Hospital, who's such a
dynamic part of this EMS process.
Mr. Manager?
We have had discussions in the past, and I imagine there'll be discussions in the future on that. But I think the health department's recommendation to me, in my own experience, mirrors this, is that you have one provider that is responsible for both, is a better way to go.
I think you should discuss that with Lowell General Hospital probably soon, because I'm getting a different interpretation.
Okay.
There's another things I can discuss here, but the last things I am going to discuss, because I have probably about 10 other things to discuss, is the fact that they're proposing a 15-minute response time for backup. And I can just say to you, I'm a citizen of Lowell, and I know all the councils here are citizens in Lowell. I think the current plan calls for either 10 to 12 minutes. Just imagine waiting 15 minutes, either any of yours, for a backup ambulance, when my company supplies 20 to 25 ambulances in the city that can be there within sometimes 3 to 4 minutes. Why would anyone agree to allow the current provider allow for 15 minutes for a backup provision? Does that make sense to anyone? So,
Mr. Manager?
Ms. Daly, I appreciate a couple of the things you've raised here, and
Sure.
we'll follow up on those.
okay. To close, I just ask that I think there's a significant rush here. I think there are many issues that are going to be raised tomorrow night more so than in this forum. Maybe this isn't the one. I do apologize to Councilor Kennedy that I did not intend to overstep my boundaries here and asking the same question he did. I thank you all for your time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Daly. Councilor Kennedy?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. The motion reads to request that the city manager provide an explanation of why we're not doing an RFP. I think that it probably should be said at the outset that the motion was not intended because there was any criticism of the current contractor. I think everybody agrees that they do a good job. I think that the current contractor serves as a good citizen for the community. They contribute a lot of money to a lot of different causes and so forth. And it's not meant, and I also see the value in continuing on with the same contractor, especially for a service like this. However, the contract doesn't run out until June 30th. We are doing it now. We're doing it without a request for proposal. And I think in light of that, and we're doing it as you're walking out the door. And in light of that, I think that it would be in the spirit of transparency, which is one of your favorite topics, Mr. Manager, that there should be an explanation as to why we're not doing an RFP. I'm not saying that there should be an RFP. I'm just saying that there should be a public explanation of why we aren't doing one. And I do understand that the Board of Health meets tomorrow night, that they'll be going over this in much more detail than the City Council will. Maybe your explanation should come afterwards. But I think that we deserve one. And then I think besides that, in light of the recent communication from the fire chief, that his concerns should also be addressed by you in the same report. Hopefully, we'll be able to get that next Tuesday.
Do my best.
We won't get it the Tuesday after, I don't think, right?
Well, you could.
Yeah. Anyways, that's the intent of the motion. That's really all that the motion was about. I just think that it serves Trinity well, it serves this council well, it serves you well if there is a public explanation of why we're not doing an RFP on this.
Further discussion on the motion? All those in favor of the motions? Councilor Rourke?
Not with regard to this particular one, this contract, but just in general, on a no-bid contract or when there's no RFP that's required, who drafts the language for such a contract? Is it
Of the contract?
Yeah.
Generally, it's done by the solicitor with the input from the department head. Not specifically to this this contract was the health director and the city solicitor. Am I describing that?
Madam Solicitor?
It's a contract that has been in place for many years, and as changes take place, for example, we did have a change that took place recently to the contract, and I met with the health director. It was an amendment to the current contract, and we went over the language, and the amendment was approved and executed, and is now part of the current contract, and I believe it is intended that if there is a future contract, that language would be retained. So that's generally the process that would
So
take
like
place.
things like updated technologies and so forth, that's just added in?
Updated
additional
technology or new
services.
needs that the city identifies, or for instance, the change that was made in the ambulance contract within the past 7.5 years was the inclusion of a reimbursement to the city for dispatch services. Up until that time, those costs for EMS dispatch were borne entirely by the city. In this way, we pass that on to the provider, that they pay the city by formula a certain amount of money, and it ranges roughly $250,000.
Great. And, and not knowing this before, I guess, a conversation you had with the speaker, it seems like that with regards to the advanced life support, that Lowell General is part of that?
They are part of it, but the provider is responsible, is the first one responsible. They're the ones who are ultimately responsible for BLS and ALS, and they bring in Lowell General as needed.
So is it kind of like a subcontract to a contract? Correct. So as a city, are we leaving money on the table? Could the city save money if we went directly with a subcontractor, not necessarily Lowell General, but any subcontractor?
No, we wouldn't save any money.
Okay. And just finally, for the auditor, just out of curiosity, for any no bid contract, how does the contract, one other provider, pay the city? Is it a monthly, weekly, quarterly thing?
They usually make 2 payments during the year.
Thank you.
Council Marcia? Yeah, Mr. Manager, then Council Marcia.
Just by way of clarification, this contract, number of contracts under the state procurement law are not required that you can do negotiation, waste, insurance, ambulance,
To understand
tow.
what, yeah.
So just so it's the reference to a no bid, there's another procedure that's set up, but it's.
So with regards to this certain one, Madam Auditor, that's 125, 6 months in? Okay, thank you.
Council Marcia?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. At first, I wasn't going to say anything, because it's very difficult, whatever you say. This is a very touchy issue, because we have 2 outstanding companies that provide a valuable service. Both of these outstanding partners with the city have contributed to every need possible. When the call goes out, these are the people that step up to the plate. They're in everything. They help the city. We don't have enough money in the budget to do a lot of things that we'd like. That's what these people do. They come forward and they fill tremendous gaps in this city. Having said that, I'm just thankful to God that this council isn't the branch of government that's going to make a decision on who gets this contract. I wish we could share it, but I don't know that you can. But the fact remains that I heard Mr. Daley say, I'm not here to support an RFP. I'm just here because there are concerns that need to be addressed, and I think that's fine. So having said that, it's almost like, which one of your children do you like the best? It's that way with me, because they both are outstanding companies. I just feel that one company is saying that there are some concerns. This isn't the fact that the city council deals with that. That's with the health department. one company's talking about a service zone plan in place, different ambulance at instead of 3 should be 5 or whatever. I'm not familiar with the ramifications and details of this, but I just want to say that one company will get it, one company won't. That's not to say that it's fair, but that's the way that things go. Life isn't always fair. I wish we could make it fairer and do something like we did with the towing contracts and give zones or whatever, but I know that we can't. But I couldn't be less of a person to say that we're very grateful to the both companies for all that they do for the city anyway. So I'm just glad it doesn't rest with this council. I don't know which I would do, but I will state that there are concerns that one person brought up, and it should be looked at for the safety of the public. Not to say that it isn't safe now, but there's always room for improvement. And that's as far as I'll go, and I'm just, I can't say any more than that. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Council Marcia. Further discussion on this item? Council Martin.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Trying to get your attention. Current provider serves on the board of directors of a client of mine. I filed a disclosure with the clerk about that. The city council is not the awarding authority on this contract, nor do we approve it, so I don't see the basis for any conflict of interest, but in the event there's an appearance of that, I did make the filing, and I plan to support the motion.
Thank you, Council. Council Belanger?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. Question to the manager. Mr. Manager, as far as ALS services and DLS services, do hospitals have any input here? I mean, do we just force feed them and say, this is who you're using and what it is? Can you explain that?
Mr. Manager?
Sorry. No, I mean, hospitals have a job of being hospitals, and they, people, all sorts of people can transport in. There are communities that have municipal services run out of their fire department or their police department or standalone services. There are communities that have, a private provider that does that, and whoever brings them in. Not all hospitals offer ALS. It's a business component of a hospital is to decide whether they want to offer ALS or just let the ambulance companies do that. So.
Okay. Well, to echo Councilor Mercy's comments that I'd hate to be the one to have to make this decision. I know, and most of this council body knows these two men personally, and they are both outstanding members of the community, and we're lucky to have them both. They're both very deserving of this. But in the public eye, the taxpayer wants the best deal for the city, and the ambulance may very well be that. I don't know. I guess we'll never know without a proper process, Mr. Manager. It's my understanding that it's within the scope of your authority to extend this contract without council approval. It's my belief that the council is powerless at this point to do much of anything. It's in the, when Councilor Kennedy made this motion, I would like to think he would expect this kind of debate going on, and for Mr. Daly and Mr. Chumley to be here this evening, by all means. There should not be any surprises. I don't think there's much this council can do about tomorrow night. It's now in the hands of the health board. But maybe we can work on 3 years from now. I don't know. If it's, within this council's to interfere, but that's a story for another day. But for right now, this council is handcuffed. There's really not much we can do. I'd like to see the process change a little bit in the future. I did receive calls up until I hung up when I set foot in this building from a caller that I didn't even know, saying that, he wants the best deal for the city, and I understand where he's coming from. So, again, it's too late for tomorrow night, but perhaps it's something this council should revisit, and that's to the powers to be. So, again, a very difficult situation to be involved in with such two great men here in the city. But as Councilor Mercy stated, one's got to get it and one doesn't. So it's just a conversation for future dates. Thank you very much.
Mr. Manager?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. To Councilor Belanger, in terms of the best deal for the city, I think it's important to point out, and I guess there was some discussion of this on the radio the other day, that that it could be bid out and get as much money as we can. That's what we do with the tow contracts. We put that out. We send out a request for bids. It's not a formal 30B procurement process, but we go out and we get people, whoever's going to give us the most money. That's not the case with ambulance providers. They're limited on what you can charge them, and so we charge them, whether it's the current provider, Mr. Daly's company, or some other company. We can only charge them so much for the services we provide as part of emergency medical, the emergency medical services. What we look for, what I trust the health department to evaluate, is to get the best set of conditions from the provider and the best performance from the provider. And it is a very sensitive topic because you can go with a different solid waste vendor, and if the solid waste vendor doesn't do a good job, the trash doesn't get picked up, you can always send someone else out to pick the trash up. You can always terminate and go somewhere else, do something else. With an ambulance provider, if you don't have a track record and a relationship that is based on performance, then tragedies can occur. If you don't have the right personnel, you don't have the right equipment, you don't have the right numbers of equipment, and so on. So it gets into some a little bit more difficult circumstances there. So anyway, I'm looking for the Board of Health to give me their thoughts, and then I'll make some decision as to what to do, but I thought you made some very good points there.
Well, that's funny. You did mention the towing contracts, Mr. Manager, and the towing contracts are structured where it's divvied up into 4 companies citywide, is that correct?
Right.
What about future, about this council possibly splitting the duties between? Is that doable? Is that within the scope of our authority?
No, but I don't think, I personally don't think that, and I heard Councilor Mercia make that as a suggestion, or her interest in, wouldn't it be great if we could do that? I think, again, if the tow truck doesn't show up within their district, and we want backup, so that if there's a lot of cars that need to be towed for some reason, we can have a number of companies that can go out there. If you're just relying upon one, generally they only have a couple pieces of equipment that they can send out. We need to, so we split it up for that reason, and to get some financial competition there. In this, you'd want to have one provider that covers every single address in the city of Lowell, and that you could have a response to that, a coordinated response. That would be my, I've talked to some other people about that, and that's what the sense is.
Okay, thank you.
Further discussion on this? Councilor Lay, could you just come up here for one moment, please?
Mayor Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. I just feel, the current holders of the contract have done a very good job for many, many years. And I guess my concern, Mr. Manager, is, I've been an advocate to put bids out, requests for proposals, all the time, whether it's understanding that, there are provisions of the law which they give some latitude, but to me, sometimes they don't always get the desired effect. And whether it's, there's a 3-year contract awarded for an independent audit, which did not go out to bid. Solid waste didn't go out to bid. Tow contracts, interestingly enough, I did file a motion, so I felt compelled to come down and speak on this. I just think it's always a cleaner process when there is a public participation process, whether it's an RFP or whether it is, a straight bid process. So it just doesn't look good sometimes, Mr. Manager, especially in light of the fact that you're leaving in 2 weeks. The Board of Health does take it up. We do have, you're given the jurisdiction to sign contracts, 3-year contracts. So, moving forward, it just, and again, it's not a reflection on the company, or I think some good points were brought up tonight that could and hopefully will be addressed moving forward by the Board of Health tonight. But it's, to me, in the interest of transparency, it's always a good thing to do, and it's the professional way to handle something. So I just want to make those comments, and it's, again, no reflection of the current company involved at all whatsoever, but I have come down and spoke on, whether it's bidding at the Housing Authority, forced labor accounts, all those issues. I thought it's important to come down and speak and, make note of the fact that it's a cleaner and it's a proper process when you go out and do that. So, thank you, Mr. Vice Chair.
Sure. Mr. Manager?
Mr. Mayor, I think you make some very good points there, and I can't disagree with you on those points. I do think that one point of clarification, though, solid waste it didn't go out to a formal advertised bid, but we did seek bids from multiple vendors to do that, just for clarification purposes, but I understand your point. But I do think in this case, too, there is a public participation process. I think that was a great comment that you made about public participation. There is a public participation process because it is done through the Board of Health and their deliberations, and the public is certainly encouraged to participate in that, and as opposed to another procurement that we just do administratively, where we would do that, then I could see the issue there, but it's a good point.
Any further discussion? So all in favor of the motion? All opposed? Ayes have it.
Aye.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda, is a motion.
Mr. Mayor,
Madam,
if I could
Council Mercier?
if I could request my two motions come together, please, that'd be fine.
Okay, motion to take both motions by Councilor Mercier together by Councilor Brooks, second by Councilor Milonazo. All those in favor signify by saying aye, and the opposed. So ordered. First motion, Councilor Rita Mercier requests City Manager have proper department install 2 signs, no parking here to corner at both corners of Roper Street and Rockingham Street. Second motion, request permission and to discuss and question snow removal and parking issues on Roper Street and address public safety issues. Seconded by Councilor Martin. There's a registered speaker.
Yes.
Council Mercier, do you want to speak before, or do you want to speak? Let the registered speaker.
I thought it was always courtesy to let the person speak first, so I'll let this gentleman speak.
Mr. Clerk.
Stuart Segal.
Oh. Thank you for having me. My name is Stuart Siegel. I live on Roper Street, and I'm actually here representing about 100 people from Roper Street that are fed up. I'm sorry it talks about snow again. And I've been fighting snow all week because that's what I do for a living. But I've lived in Roper Street for 10 years, and the running joke used to be, because my in-laws live in Lexington, that my street was always plowed better than theirs. And for what I pay in taxes for a year, they pay in a quarter. What's frustrating is that in the last 5 years, I've been constantly after the DPW and the police department. We're down to 1 lane. Literally, I asked Rita to come over and look at it because nobody would, sometimes we would get help, sometimes we wouldn't. Councilman Barth, you said you had people, so it can't just be my neighborhood What's frustrating to me is that you send a reverse 911 call out telling people to stay off the street. Great. The police come by, they tow a couple of cars, they put a ticket on, they blow the siren. It works. Works for another storm. The last storm, we called again. I was told by a police officer who refused to give me his name that our street wasn't important and Rockingham Street wasn't important. I've been there in this last 10 years where there's been snowfalls and you do not get a fire engine or an ambulance down Rockingham to turn onto Roper Street because they can't make the turn. Between the cars parked there, the snow that's piled up, they back up and they go down Burton Street to get to Roper Street. Numerous instances. My concern is, why are 2 storms important and 1 storm isn't? Obviously, the police officer made that decision. I don't know who else made the decision with them. There's a car that's been buried in the snow for 4 weeks. The subcontractors were so frustrated they buried the car with their plows. They had 2 pickups. They were doing the best they could. The police officer that was there 3 storms ago was helping to direct them. They got so frustrated they buried the car. It's been there now for 4 weeks. There's pictures of it. The majority of the vehicles belong to the Rockingham condos. We've been trying to see. We know because Joe's Fence put a fence up at the Rockingham condos. When it was surveyed, they put it actually on their property line. So there is a curb there that belongs to Roper Street. Rockingham Street doesn't have that luxury, but they inevitably don't get plowed because people park there. I know people have accused our contractor, who is J&K Excavating, Joe Forrester, who does work for the town. He was accused by the police officer during the last storm of putting the snow over there. He might have put maybe a swipe or 2 over there, but at our request and at our bill, we paid him to remove whatever he put over there. All of that snow in Roper and Rockingham Street is because people don't move and the subcontractors plow it the best they can. It's now it's impassable, excuse me. The fire engine was there after the last storm to clear the fire hydrant, which is on our property, but it's always checked. They're diligent about it. They had to wait and back up into our property so that the bus could go by because there wasn't room for 2 vehicles. And I just would like to know why, if you have it in other neighborhoods, why do you send a phone call 3 times to my house that says there's a reverse 911 to get off the street? Why is my street important for 2 storms, but a police officer decides that it's not for another storm? My issue is getting to be a safety issue with it.
Mr. Manager?
I provided pictures that I hope will help.
Thank you.
The issue, sir, is that it's not so much a plowing issue, it's an enforcement issue.
Yes.
In your mind, okay.
When it is enforced, the town truck comes through.
Right.
And the kid that plows there, the kid's awesome.
Right.
I mean, I'd like to hire him. But when the cars aren't enforced or people don't move, it's not.
Okay.
Now, the town truck has actually driven from Burton Street down Roper Street to Rockingham and not even plowed Rockingham Street because he can't get down there with the plow. And I know he's got a big Arctic plow on it. He has backed up into our property and gone right back up Roper Street and never touched Rockingham at numerous times. They wait till they get a pickup truck. And even then, it's difficult. My concern is there's a lot of kids in this neighborhood. And the fact is that my understanding is, if I'm correct, it's 20 feet to a corner that you can't park. That never gets enforced.
If I may, sir, why don't
Manager.
we talk to the police about this? I think we I'm not sure my office knew about this, but we will tell the police that there's an issue out there. We want them to check that out. We don't tow every car that's on the road. We tow them if they're interfering with the plowing. And the reason I say that is there are people out there that have been towed. And they can't understand why they were towed and someone else wasn't towed. Generally, it would become almost impossible for us to tow every vehicle that's on the street. So what we do is the places where it's a problem for the plows. And but this sounds like it's such a situation. So why don't we follow up on that? And
Well, just my concern is, why is it okay for 2 storms?
Right.
And the third storm, they decide that it's not.
Right.
And his response to me, he refused to give me his name. And his response was, our street isn't important. It's a secondary road. Well, obviously it's a secondary road, but at some point you have to plow it.
Right.
Now you've got a BMW that's buried in 4 storms worth of snow. I mean, you'd be lucky if you see it in May. It's a concern because you send a reverse 911 call.
Right.
And the police department tells me when I call the non-emergency number to call the DPW. The DPW tells me to call the police department. The firemen tell me, we don't know what to do, call the sign department. So I called the sign department. It's just this constant thing. So my next thing was to call the councilwoman and say, what do we do?
Thank you, sir.
We will
Thank you for your
follow
time.
up on this, though.
It's just a safety issue.
Right.
You guys are well. You want this?
On the motion, Council Mercia?
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On Saturday, February 15th, I personally received a reverse 911 call from Superintendent Taylor informing us that there was an emergency snow parking ban in effect on all city streets at 4 o'clock. That's what he said, on all city streets. Later on in that evening, a few residents called me to complain about cars parking on Roper Street, making it difficult for the plow to widen the street because of those cars parked there. The officer who responded said to the residents who were waiting outside for the officer that the ban applies to main streets, not secondary streets. So I'm not confusing the fact that we tow from main streets. I know that we tow from main streets first, and we tow from secondary streets later. I specifically asked if that was what was said. The response was the parking ban is only meant for certain main streets and doesn't apply to this street. Now, that's not how I interpret the law. I interpret it as the parking ban in effect is for all city streets, not just primary streets. So that right there, police have to know the rules a little bit better than that. So I went to meet the neighbors on Sunday to view firsthand what the situation was, and this is what I observed. The length of 6 cars was not plowed off to the side due to cars being parked along the street. Therefore, a very narrow street became even narrower. And my question is, why do we have a parking ban if we don't enforce it? What good is it? We offer free garages to get your cars off the street. That car, that BMW that's parked there under the snowbank, is parked out in the street because his family members were parked in his condo lot, in the parking lot of the condo unit. Now, this is what I don't understand. The family's all over, and he parks in the street. You think he would have said, let's get all these cars and go to the garage and come back with 1 car. But that only makes sense, so why would we do such a thing like that? Now, picture the car in the snowbank, all covered in with snow, and another plow comes by with another storm, and he says to himself, gee, let's widen this up a little bit more. And he widens it up, and he hits that car that's parked underneath all that snow. Who do you think's going to get sued? The city is going to get sued for damaging that car that's left on the street. So it's like a vicious, vicious cycle. The car is completely buried in the snow. It should be ticketed anyway. I don't even know if it is. At the very end of Roper Street that connects to Rockingham Street, where two cars parked on each corner in an L shape. One was this way, one was that way. One was on Roper, one was on Rockingham. A perfect example of how an emergency vehicle is not able to make a turn. I have a car, and I had a bad time to get around it. So I need two signs. No parking here to corner. People probably don't know it unless the signs are up. So I would like one on this street on Roper, 20 feet this way on Rockingham, so that emergency vehicle can get through. We need to restore safety to that street and tow anyone who violates the safety of others. Now, I also want to say that I believe that my colleagues got an email from a woman that got her car towed on Tyler Park. She got towed for $118, plus she got a $20 ticket. And that's all well and good. She didn't abide by the law. I suppose she didn't have a way to get it off the street. I don't know. But I felt bad the lady got a ticket, but that's what the rule said. So as she's going to the bank, which I'm assuming is at Couple Square, she's walking down seeing quite a few cars being covered with snow that never got towed or ticketed or anything. So it's kind of sad to know that someone paid the price, and while she's walking to get the money out of the bank to retrieve her car, she's seeing all these violations. How does that become fair? Why do we even have ordinances when we don't even enforce them? We get a parking ban. I think the superintendent shouldn't call my house anymore because nobody's going to listen to it anyway. Oh, some will, some won't, but it doesn't matter. Some will get towed, some will not. It's like a crapshoot. I don't know. But anyways, that's the gist of the motion. I'm a little bit disheartened. I know about the situation downtown. I thought we purchased a beautiful piece of equipment that we didn't have to use that would clear all that. Why do we have parking meters if we're not even going to have a way for people to climb over snowbanks? And something's not right here in this city. Something is not right. We think and rack our heads together to try to find a way to make things better, and yet we don't make things better. People are climbing over snowbanks. They can't pay the ticket to put in to park. Something has to be done. We need to streamline this a little bit better. Is it because we don't have enough people? Is it because that there's a snowstorm every other day? I don't know what the situation. People are tired because they're so overworked with all the snow. Spring is coming. I guess that's the only thing we can look
That's my
forward
solution.
to. Spring is in the air, so
That's a good close. That's a good close on that motion.
that's
Councilwoman
about
Garcia.
it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Leahy, did you want to speak, sir? Just very briefly. Motion to suspend the rules.
Well, we'll suspend the rules for this.
Okay,
Very
we're going to have to
briefly-
suspend the rules for this, and then we're going to have to suspend the rules for Rule 5. All those in favor of suspending rules to allow this gentleman to speak, say aye, and the opposed, motion carries. Sir?
Yes, I'm very fortunate on our street. Everyone moved into their driveways, and we got a good plow job, and we don't have a problem. I feel very, very sorry for this man. I know exactly where that area is. But I just want to mention one other thing about the snow plowing. There's a lot of tall snowbanks blocking intersections, and it seems to be a safety hazard. And I wonder if we could. Is that number that we call "see something, say something"? Would that be covering this
Yes,
type
that
of a
would.
thing?
Yes, that would.
Yeah. Okay. That's all.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. All those, Councilor Leahy, do you have something on this?
Sure, that's why I made the motion earlier, that, we really need to go over and get everybody on the same page, because it's all of these issues. In the town of Chelmsford, I was out there just the other day, and they have the truck going around that has the side arm that knocks the banks down. So, we have to take a good look at this and say, look, maybe we don't need as many private contractors and put more money into equipment in the city, because we should have a truck that goes around has the side arm plow and that can knock down the banks. If we don't have one, then we need to buy one. And if it means, taking out a couple of contractors next year and hiring a couple of guys for the city and have them doing this, that's what we need to do. But, it's all these issues. It's in the neighborhoods, it's the downtown, we don't clear out the parking spots, we don't trim down the snowbanks, we don't tow some of the cars, and really, there's really no excuse for some of the streets to get narrower and narrower. I mean, you just send a bigger truck down. The pickup trucks can't do all these streets. So when they get narrow, you send the big truck down. And if you have to shovel your driveway out twice, I'd rather shovel my driveway out twice than have my street narrowed down. And it's the inconsistencies around the school. I mean, one time they do a great job at the school, and then the next time, who's over there watching? And, the way people park around the schools, it's emergency issues. So this is the stuff that we really need to sit down and straighten this out. And unfortunately, you won't be here for that, Mr. Manager, so.
I'm very disappointed.
I know you're disappointed, but really, when we have our subcommittee meeting, this is what we need to get done and make sure we're all on the same page. Thank you.
Well, Mr. Geary's taking some good notes here, so.
Can I say one thing?
Sir?
I work for a company called The Groundskeeper. The owner, Dick Churchill, and his son, Brian Churchill, are founding members of the Snow and Ice Management Association. We would come down and help you guys on the subcommittee to consult, to tell you what you might need. We are so far ahead of the technology of what's going on in the snow industry. I'm sure that they would come down for a couple of hours and sit in a subcommittee and say, look, this is what you should be doing, this is the equipment. I'd offer our services to the town. I mean, I live here.
Thank you, sir. We'll take you up on that offer. Council Mercia will bring it to our attention.
Well,
Council Mercia?
We know what we need, we just don't have the money for it. Because I think it would be a good idea if we got this piece of equipment that sucks in the snow and turns it into water, then we could take that truck and bring it down to Shed Park and empty the water there and flood it out and have ice skating. So one thing would feed the other, so, but it costs money. We don't have it. We just spent $2 million for the school, unless they want to buy it.
Maybe they'll buy it. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. And the opposed, motion carries. Being after 10 o'clock, there are 3 motions on executive sessions. I have to entertain a motion to suspend Rule 5 by Council Rourke, seconded by Council Mercia. It's a roll call? Yep. Roll call?
Mayor Elliott.
Yes.
Counsel Kennedy.
No.
Counsel Leahy.
Yes.
Counsel Martin.
No.
Motion to suspend fails. Meeting is adjourned. I entertain a motion to adjourn while the meeting is adjourned.
last night.
Have a good evening.